So let me just.
But once you stay at the folios, you can ask.
Ah.
Hello. Hello there.
Hi.
Wow. You guys are drinking. Hey, Electra.
Hello. Just for a sec. I'm trying to get you on the big screen because there's a couple of us sitting together and
Wow.
I'm not. It's a bit late in the day and
I so miss you guys. We're back later this year. We'll be back later in the second half of the year.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, Marcus is coming as well from Network Society Camp as well.
My other display.
John, how's it going?
What was it?
Are you from the United Network Nations group or different group?
Yes. I found this through.
Yeah.
Wait, actually, I think I was posted in quite a few places. Was it? Yeah, was it the net? There was a network.
There's also Country Founders.
That's Ed's group, I think, isn't it? And
that's there's one Country Founders United Network Nations. Quite a few, yeah, quite a few. Hey, Marcus.
I think I'm pretty much member of all of them, really.
Mr. Jim, how you doing?
Fantastic. Good. So we have a conglomeration of various Startup Society Network State groups. So we have John from United Network Nations, Marcus from Network Society Camp, Electra, and a lot of others from the Network School in Malaysia, where Balaji is, and then Menachem, he's our host, founder, and will be leading us through today's session. He's based in Tel Aviv right now.
Who's in Malaysia right now? Who's actually in Malaysia at the moment as we speak?
Electra, the folks you see in this room here.
Oh, Electra is actually in Malaysia.
Malaysia, yeah.
With, pretty close to Balajis right now. Is she?
Yeah, hi. We're at Network School in Malaysia, across the strait from Singapore, and we're in VIP room 7 in one of these beautiful rooms, and there's just a couple of us sitting together having a wine to join tonight. So I'm turning off the audio while I just get us sorted.
Wow, I've passively consumed quite a lot of Network School content on YouTube, but I've never actually talked to anyone live from Malaysia.
There's James of Arc.
James!
Hi everyone, you've got a crew here.
But we're just trying to get on the big TV, and it's all in Chinese. Someone's changed the settings, so. But don't hold yourselves up because of us. We'll gather around my computer if we have to.
Awesome. Oh, let me know if you need translation Chinese for the TV.
Like this. We normally do it.
Don't let us hold you up.
Fantastic.
It is on HTML.
Maybe we just wait for like a couple of minutes to see if there's more folks joining. Then we can start. Perfect. And Marcus, are you calling in from Orlando, right?
Yeah. I'm back in Orlando right now.
Fantastic. How was India? You were doing this retreat in India before.
Yeah, India was great. I went with like a nomad like tech founders and entrepreneurs group, and yeah, it was like my first experience doing something like that with a larger group, but it was a lot of fun, and like traveling with people who are all just like trying to lock in and work in like just a beautiful town in the mountains is a great way to work and live.
Nice. And John, where are you coming from?
I'm in Peterborough right now. I'm not sure if you've heard of a fellow called Ed. I guess there's two kind of network state projects that I'm kind of involved in at the moment. One is Traditional Dream Factory in Portugal. Have you heard of Traditional Dream Factory?
I have not, no. Educate us.
I think it's the first DAO that I'm personally aware of that where you can actually use the token to get a deep discount in physical accommodation. So like you buy TDF tokens, and they're like a timeshare, and then And then if you stake your
Oh,
tokens, you pay
so-
maybe £15 rather than £45 a day.
Nice, nice, nice.
And then Ed also has this other project called Whale Tone Computers. So he's actually what he's trying to do is you know the way that the Raspberry Pi, that Raspberry Pi is like almost a personal computer, but it's still got a lot of glitches. He's basically doing something that's roughly the same price as the Raspberry Pi, only he's
Yep.
really trying to just focus on making it a functional personal computer that's Linux based, well, with a Linux code base. He's not using the Linux brand because he doesn't own the brand trademark, but he's using the code base because the code base is open source, and he's creating his own brand, which is Whaletone, and he's basically trying to make something like a Raspberry Pi, only that actually is really optimized to just function as a personal computer rather than doing all these random hobby things.
Nice, nice, nice. And I think Ed texted me a while, just was asking like, what is this? What's going on? But that's awesome. I'm sorry. So you're calling in from where again?
Peterborough in Cambridgeshire.
Oh, Cambridge. Oh, wow. That's in the UK. So we really have
Not
different.
not Cambridge town. I'm not in the university town. I'm in another town that's in the same county.
Okay, okay, okay. Got it, got it. And pardon me for the James, who's like in the Malaysia group. He's from the UK as well.
Oh,
The
wow.
gentleman, yeah, the gentleman with the long hair, handsome gentleman with the long hair. He's also from England.
James, well, I can say to James that that if you are in England again, Ed does occasionally do kind of meetups, Network Nation meetups in person in the Tavistock Hotel. Yeah.
Not sure if we can hear them.
In the dark.
Okay,
I was
Pete.
confused.
Oh, there we
Hi,
go.
sorry. I think we're now actually finally ready. We've just been like sorting out some more parts. But
good.
you said you've got meetups in London, was that? Because I'm over here in Singapore with everyone.
Well, I'm sure you. Yeah. There are. I mean, Ed's got a few meetups in London. The attendance is very small. It's some days it's just me and him. Other days it's maybe 3 people, sometimes 4. You know, I think in the early meetups there might have been 8. So but yeah, there's you'll find at least 2 physical people to meet up with that are interested in network states. I can guarantee you that.
Well, at the minute I'm building here in network school in Singapore, so not planning on flying anywhere for, let's see, until Balajis kicks me out anyway. So, who knows how long that is. If that's 6 days or 6 years, flip a coin.
Well, I mean, anyway. Oh, right. But here's a question: are you going to be taking holidays in England?
Honestly, got no idea, man. If I was going to be there at some point this year, I'd be there right now. And I'm not, so probably not for the rest of this year. And we'll see. Yeah.
Well, anyway,
We'll
let's keep in touch because I definitely, both me and Ed would definitely be very interested in meeting you.
No, I'd love to. And which Ed is it? Sorry, I missed that. Ed.
Ed Randall, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Fine, cool. Well, I look forward to connecting. Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to get started?
Yeah, I think we can get started. Yeah, let's do it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll go ahead now, obviously, with the introductions. Very, very excited. So actually, I've been part of the Network State Discord and the community, obviously, when Balajis first came out with the lectures, the virtual lessons. And this is essentially work that I've been, we could say, building intellectually, but also, with Jim for the past couple of weeks. So the whole idea is, it's to essentially bring in political philosophy in general as well, but really go into the origins of society, right? And so before I actually go into the text and stuff, maybe we do a quick round of introductions. Electra, since you guys are in a room with a nice glass of wine, would you guys like to start?
Well, my name's Electra Frost. I'm from Australia, and what can I say? I've been here since September. I got the email and turned up. When I read a network state, it made sense for what I'd been working on as a concept for a very long time for the accounting profession. And this was just the right place to build it. So I've just packed up everything in Australia and I live here now. And I'm building a global accounting community as a kind of advocacy and technologist network to support startup societies.
Amazing.
And learning very quickly because I'm here.
Okay. Hey, I'm Eric. I've been in the network state writing cohort with a few of you guys. I'm in many Telegram group with John, and I'm here for one day. I don't know how to describe what I'm doing, but I'm supporting a bunch of network states and network societies. So yeah, that's about it.
Hi, I'm Suraj. I'm originally from India, and yeah, I moved in here like 3 days ago. Yeah, I'm for now here for a month. I was very curious about the whole concept after reading Balaji's book and like listening to him. So I thought I'll explore and see if I could stay for longer and how it unfolds. So yeah, and I heard of this event which seemed quite interesting on the deep philosophical conversations. So I thought I'll also get deeper and yeah, join here and see what's going on. So yeah, that's partly here. Yeah.
I agree. My name's Joe. Been here for just a few days, but this is these sort of conversations was exactly what I was wanting to have and pursue while I was here. So when I saw this come up, I was very much on board. So yeah, excited to just attend and participate.
Cool. Hi guys, James Vark. I guess I'm building a charter city. I guess I say that as that's sort of the acceptable version of a country, and you're allowed to talk about building charter cities. But I've run a couple of pop-up cities, one in Lisbon, one in Austin, and I guess I've now just sort of agreed to be building a layer 2 here at Network School. So yeah, hunkering down for now, and great to meet all the faces that I haven't met before.
Hope to see you sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Jim, you like to go, or John, Marcus?
Me? Well, I mean, I'm kind of what was I saying? I've been sort of involved in traditional Dream Factory a bit, and I've written a little book called The Network Polity or whatever, where I kind of it's mostly just ideas right now, and I think the way to like execute on that is to just become a franchise of TDF, because Sam actually wants to start many. He has this thing called Open Earth, which basically creates DAO timeshares in many different, which could potentially create DAO timeshares in many different habitations. So I think that's one of the things from the network polity, and one of the ideas of the network polity is actually arbitrage. That basically, rich people can own houses in different parts of the world, and maybe take the advantage of arbitraging from living in different countries. Poorer people can rent, I guess, but if they're renting, they're just constantly losing money. But I think one of the most compelling cases for partial ownership is actually if you want to live a multinational life and maybe you're not tremendously rich and you actually want to, if you own like part of a room in one country, part of a room in another country, like the ability to live in a room, for the right to live in a room for 3 months rent free one place, 3 months rent free another place, 1 month rent free another place. So that's basically the idea of the network polity. You start off with that, and then you kind of build insurance on top of that. That's one thing. I wrote another thing called Certification DAO, which is this idea of trying to create entries in the blockchain that sort of make claims, because I reckon that actually a blockchain is a pristine who, when, what record of claims. So who made the claim. That's the public key. When the claim was made is the timestamp, and then what the claim is the payment reference. So who, when, what record of claims. And but of course, it's just claims. The payment reference could say anything. It might not be true, But I think if you make claims referencing to each other, have a situation where you make blockchain entries so that one entry can reference to another entry and say in reference to this claim, I have evidence that's relevant to that, and somebody else does it, and then you have like a reputation system that sort of that I think in any individual claim you don't know that's true, but I think when you have a lot of claims, there's certain patterns you can come across to like decide which is true and which is not, and who's lying and who's not, and that's basically that's part of my idea of certification DAO. But I'm not a software developer, so I don't know how to execute on that. I'd definitely be interested in meeting people who are interested. Yeah, TDF that's basically what I'm doing. I've also recently become an advisor to a new think tank that Andrew Starr has founded, called Startup States Society. So I'm an advisor to that, and basically what James said is that startup cities are the only seem to be the acceptable form of founding new countries, but we want to create a think tank where we really go through what it would take to sort of start a new country with full sovereignty in a peaceful, orderly way that doesn't violate any international norms. So that's what one of the things the Startup State Society tries to go for. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll introduce. I'm Marcus. I'm based in Orlando, Florida. I mainly work in like geospatial tech, um, like construction and like working with like physical assets. I'm also an occasional digital nomad. And I think that's my like reference for like the network state and like the future of states and digital states. Um, I think I like have lived with and am interested in like groups of the size of like 20 to 100 people. But obviously very interested to see how like organizations like that scale to something like the size of cities. I haven't done any like formal work in the network state space, but I've, followed the space for a while and just find it very, very interesting. Um, and I recently just finished like a 6 month reading group for de Tocqueville for Democracy in America, which is like very relevant. It's very interesting to see how much of what he wrote is still very relevant today, and like in some of the things that we could build on. So um like this salon was very timely for that to go from that to even further back to look at Aristotle and to like sort of rethink like organizations of humans from like first principles and see you know what is similar and what is different in a digital age. So I'm excited to think through some of those ideas with y'all this morning.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcus. Jim?
I'm Jim. Was in the TNS group with Menachem, Fritz, a lot of others. We were kind of in those beta lectures that Balaji was writing the network state book, and then was with also with Eric and Menachem in the TNS Connect writers cohorts to kind of write about network states year after year with Matt Harder and a few others. And I've been in the network school a couple times. Most recently with James was leading this wonderful startup society group. We had these weekly discussions, and hoping to come back to the network school as well later this year in the second half. And I think on the Discord there has been this discussion about how there could be more like intellectual discussions with regard to network states and network societies. And we can kind of look at this as a beta tested attempt in terms of adding more of these intellectual discussions, and also what Menachem has been pushing in terms of connecting classical political philosophy with governance and with discussions around startup societies and network states. So super excited to really co-learn with everyone, and super excited to kind of engage in interactive discussions.
Thank you, Jim. Awesome, guys. So, yep, thank you for the quick round of introductions. I mean, 10 minutes is perfect. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and share my screen, just to give
Sorry,
you.
is your mic is your I don't know if your mic is working or something, but it's very quiet for us here. Is it quiet for anyone else or
Yeah,
pretty-
yes,
else
I can only hear quite a little. I can't hear very loudly at all. Yeah.
Was it? It's pretty clear over here. I don't know if it's a connection issue or something.
Is it a
like
volume?
everyone is really loud? It's just forgive me, I don't know your name, sir, but you know, with the best gear, the brilliant mic in the front of the screen, can't hear anything basically. I think if you're showing your someone, I don't know who's showing their screen. We got the Zoom is not.
Oh, that's not me.
Okay.
Oh, no, okay.
Yeah, it's me. Let me check. Yeah, I see it's at my mic is actually not even connected here for some reason.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
No, it's fine. If not, I'll just
I can
Not
still
you.
hear you. I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
You guys can't hear me? Here, I'll take off the mic. Maybe I use another one.
Spray to spray. No, it's faster.
Oh.
No. What if I approach my voice like this?
That's probably better.
Is it better?
Yeah, I can
I think
hear
it's a
you.
bit better.
Can the folks in the network school hear?
Electra?
Oh, I think they dropped off. Let's wait a little bit.
All good.
We're bound to have technical issues. That's fine. I mean, it's part of the beta test. Let's wait for them to come back. We're in like super different time zones. Marcus is in the US East Coast. John is in the UK Greenwich time, close.
Yeah. GMT.
I'm in Manila, Philippines, so GMT +8. Same with network school folks in Malaysia, GMT +8. Menakem is in Tel Aviv, which is kind of in the middle of that. We span the globe.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very clear,
No, much better. Much better.
very clear.
I have
You guys-
I have so
I think their TV got disconnected or something.
all good. Let's see. I got a new mic, so
Oh, Electra is coming back. Where's Mad Operator? He's supposed to be coming in.
Yeah.
Where's my friend Mad?
Oh wow.
Hey Electra, welcome back.
here, no, they're not connected to the audio yet.
Welcome back. I think the video is still connecting a little bit. Let's wait a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. We've had to just join by browser because my Zoom app crashed. So it's not working right now. So but we can hear and see you.
Can
Oh.
you hear me now, Electra? Is it better?
Yeah, it was our end. We crashed. Our
Oh.
Zoom crashed. But we can see and hear you clearly. So you can carry on.
All good. Okay, great. So now that we have that resolved, thank you guys again for joining. Okay, so just to go through the actual structure of this session. So the whole idea is obviously we're going to take it from Balajis, really the first couple of sentences that he had when he was doing the lectures and also in his book. So technology has allowed us to start new companies, new communities, and even currencies. But can we even create new cities or even countries? The key concept is to go cloud first, land last, but not land never, by starting with an online community and then materializing it into the physical world. So, and then he goes on, obviously to go through the 7 steps. You found a startup society, you organize it, etc., etc., until you essentially you gain diplomatic recognition from other nation states. And so this is basically like what I wanted to do from the get-go, is like start from there. And also a couple of sentences apart, he goes on and says, if a startup begins by identifying an economic problem in today's market and presenting a technologically informed solution to that problem in the form of a new company, a startup society begins by identifying a moral issue in today's culture and presenting a historically informed solution to that issue in the form of a new society. So these are like the points of origin that I would want to go ahead, and start Edeneum. That's basically the whole idea, and essentially take it from there, right? So how do we go ahead and actually do that from that perspective? And my opinion, based on the research, of course, and the discussion with Jim, is, the best way would be to go through a political philosophy angle, right? And so that is essentially the whole idea. Now, as I dug deeper and deeper and deeper, I actually ended up finding out that there's a lot of amazing professors, obviously, who are talking about this. And one of them specifically, his name is Harvey Mansfield, actually from Harvard, and he came up with an amazing list of any student inside of political philosophy who wants to get into this world, right? And so basically, I created this, database. Actually, Jim and I, along with Matt Operator and a couple, who were joining here and there, a couple of months ago, we actually started with the history of the Peloponnesian War, right? And so basically, the professor, it's a very small book. It's the Student Guides to Political Philosophy. You guys could get it if you want. But basically, he breaks down, based on the periods and also the authors and the works themselves, what exactly are we talking about? Right. And so what I wanted to do originally was like create kind of like this database where not only we would be analyzing, we would be studying and talking about them, but also how it would relate to network societies, right? So startup societies to the network state, right? And so it's like a resource for us to go ahead and actually, not only learn together, but, potentially use it for the future. And Marcus, you mentioned, Tocqueville. So Tocqueville is actually on this list as well. Much later down the line, but that's basically the idea, really, like from Aristotle, to even Machiavelli, Nietzsche, really all the way down. Here we have Tocqueville with the Marxian America, right? So the whole idea is to study them, but with putting in mind the network societies with these, right? So obviously these are the greatest political philosophers that have outlasted every single writing really in history. Obviously, there's other ones, but based on this professor's recommendation, this is essentially what we decided. So let me just go back to here. Okay, so that's around the political philosophy angle. The second thing, actually, which was pretty interesting, is around the organon itself. Okay, so if you guys haven't heard or studied it, maybe Aristotle, even before philosophy, right? So this was a big difference between his school and the other schools in ancient Greece, and this was the organon, right? And so a lot of people back then, they were saying that the organon, or a tool for the mind, for philosophy, it was an end in itself. It was a science in itself. It was knowledge in itself. Whereas Aristotle and his school were saying, no, it's not an end. We should use it in order to philosophize, in order to understand and reason correctly. And so the whole organon is essentially 6 or 7 books. I mean, it depends which schools you're essentially talking about. And the whole idea is to refine the mind and to use logical principles, essentially, the foundations of Western society in a logical way, right? And so the categories, interpretation, the art of rhetoric, right? Prior analytics and posterior analytics. This is syllogisms and the proof demonstration, first principles. How do you even come up with this? And so on and so forth, right? So there's a whole curriculum, really, even before philosophizing, right? So these are like very interesting things or resources to get acquainted with as we go into this journey. So this is something like on the side, but again, what we wanted to do as something to begin is obviously go inside of Aristotle's text, right? So like one of the most fundamental texts out there. We wanted to go ahead and start with book number 3, which actually talks about what is the nature of the state, what exactly are citizens, and the different forms of constitutions. So what we're going to do, and this is part of the salon, we'll actually put a timer, is we'll do a reading together, we'll study it together, and as we read, as we take turns, if you have any thoughts, obviously you could write it down, but again, like really think about how this could relate to network societies, startup societies, whatever it may be, and then we'll discuss it in the next section after we come for the break. So I think this is like a solid introduction, and I think we could get started. Who would like to volunteer and be the first one to read?
I think we have someone
I
joining
guess
us.
I could if you want. What you want me to read off the screen or what?
You could read on the screen, or I sent also via email the link itself. So what I did in this Notion here, maybe I could actually send it to you guys inside of the Zoom. What I did is because the actual English translation from Perseus and other ones, I mean, these are translations that were done like a really long time ago. So what I did is I read the 3rd book over the past day, and I also put an AI simplifier in terms of language. So if you guys want to read the actual text, it's in bold, and the AI translation or the simplified, the dimmed down version of the text, then you could read it in regular font. So I could go ahead and actually share this. And then, yeah, you could read from it, John, if you would like. Let me go
Is
ahead.
this like this is in the chat, yeah?
Yeah, I'll put it right now.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, I could also put this for the ones who are in front of the. Yep.
Oh, let me try. Okay. Fine. Notion. Okay. Notion. So I have to continue with Google or something like that, yeah? Okay. Page not found. Bill Prinkex, Notion site.
Yeah, try this one. I actually published it as a site. So
Okay, I've got. No, wait. Sorry,
all good.
That's weird. That's weird. If I do refresh, it sort of it briefly flicks to Edeneum, and then it says Edeneum. I can see Edeneum. Okay, I think I've got it. Okay, I've got it. So what was it? Part 3, Part 2, text study. Okay, Part 2, text study analysis of the state and citizens. Yoink.
I'll begin the timer. We'll put a 1 hour, 1.5 hour reading session, and then we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll go ahead and discuss. So when you're ready, John.
Okay. Part 2, text study analysis of the state, citizens, and constitution. What is the essential nature? For the student of government and of nature and characteristics of the various forms of constitution, almost the first question to consider is in regard to the state. What exactly is the essential nature of the state? As it is, this is a matter of dispute. A public act is spoken by some people as the action of the state. Others speak of it as the action not of the state, but of the oligarchy or the tyrant in power. As we see that the activity of the statesman and lawgiver is entirely concerned with the state as its object. A constitution is a form of organization of the inhabitants of a state. But a state is a composite thing, in the same sense as any other of the things that are whole but consist of many parts. It is therefore clear that we must first inquire into the nature of the citizen. For a state is a collection of citizens, so that we have to consider who is entitled to the name citizen and what the essential nature of a citizen is. For there is often a difference of opinion as to this. People do not all agree that the same person is a citizen. For somebody who would be a citizen in a democracy is not a citizen under an oligarchy. We need not here consider those who acquire the title of citizen in some exceptional manner. For example, those who are citizens by adoption, and citizenship is not constituted by domicile in a certain place. For the resident aliens and slaves share the domicile of citizens. Nor are the citizens who participate in a common system of justice conferring the right to defend an action and to bring one into the law courts. For this right belongs also to the parties under a commercial treaty and can sue and be sued by at law. Or rather, in many places, even the right of legal action is not shared completely by resident aliens, but they are obliged to protect a patron. So they only share in a common legal procedure to an incomplete degree. But they are only citizens in the manner in which children who are as of yet too young to have been enrolled in the list and old men who have been discharged must be pronounced to be citizens in a sense, yet not quite absolutely, but with the added qualification of underage in the case of the former and superannuated or similar term. It makes no difference, the meaning being clear in that of the latter. For we seek to define a citizen in the absolute sense and possessing no disqualification of the nature that requires a correcting term, since similar difficulties may also be raised and solved about citizens who have been disenfranchised or exiled. A citizen, pure and simple, is defined by nothing else so much as by the right to participate in the judicial functions and in office. But some officers of government are definitely limited in regard to time, so that some of them are not allowed to be held twice by the same person at all, or only after a fixed interval of time. Other officials are without limit of tenure, for example, the jurymen and the members of the assembly. It might perhaps be said that some persons are not officials at all, and that the exercise of these functions does not constitute the holding of office, and yet it is absurd to deny the title of official to those who have the greatest power in the state. But it need not make any difference, as it is only a question of a name, since there is no common name for a juryman and a member of the assembly that is properly applied to both. For the sake of distinction, therefore, let us call the combination of the two functions office without limitation. Accordingly, we lay it down to those who are citizens that those are citizens who participate in the office in this manner. That's it. Let's see. The right. Nothing else but the right to it. Okay, that's interesting. Office without limitation. Such, more or less, is the definition of citizen that would best fit with all of those whom the name is applied. But it must not be forgotten that things in the case of which the things to which they are related to differ in kind. One of them being primary, another one secondary, and so on, either do not contain a common nature at all, as being what they are, barely do so.
John, by the way, what did you said something is interesting. You want to share quickly?
What's interesting? What I found interesting was that they said that Aristotle defined the citizen. He said a citizen, pure and simple, is defined by nothing else so much as the right to participate in judicial functions and in office. And I think an interesting thing there is that in modern democracies, we don't really have the right to do this. We have the right to ask, but we don't actually have the right to do. You know, we have the right to stand for office in an election, for example, but we don't actually have the right to get elected. And furthermore, you know, I mean, the right to stand for office in modern democracies is fairly meaningless because, like, yes, you can start your own political party, but almost always people who start parties from scratch don't have a chance at winning elections. I mean, I guess the occasional person does run as an independent and does manage to get in, but generally speaking, to actually have significant powers in governance, you need to be a part of political parties. And again, like you don't have the right to to run for a given seat in a political party. You only have the right to ask. So I kind of wonder whether under current definitions of citizenship, under Aristotle's definition of citizenship, whether no one's actually a citizen of modern states by Aristotle's definition.
Yeah, that is it is pretty interesting. I mean, like, because if everyone is in today's society, right, we're all considered citizens in our respective countries, but are we really citizens according to? So this is actually one of the topics that, you know, we should explore for the network society specifically, and also how do you define that in a world of social media, right? If everyone is able to be logged on inside of, you know, social media, are you able to go ahead and do that based on, you know, age limits? You know, how do you actually define that citizenship when you're holding office? So the definition of a citizen is actually very, very interesting. It's good that you pointed it out. So yeah, we could keep going with the text.
Yeah,
Hey,
because we have the right to apply for many. We all citizens have the right to apply for all of these jobs. So they don't actually have the right to receive those jobs, and that's slightly different from the right to participate. The right to apply to participate and ask someone to allow you to participate is different from the right to participate.
Hey guys, we have two new joinees, Suraj and David. Suraj and David, do you want to briefly introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm just joining from the. I'll just type it. Hi, my name is David. I got the invite to the meeting from a Network State Telegram group. So I'm just very interested in Network States. I am a founder of a Network State project, and I'm interested in learning new ideologies on politics and political systems here. Thanks.
Fantastic. And where are you calling from, David? What part of the world?
From Nigeria. From Nigeria.
Wow, we're really global here. Wow.
Yeah.
Asia, Middle East, Europe, North America, the Americas, and in Nigeria, in Africa. Fantastic. We're supposed to have folks from South America, Brazil coming in as well. Let's see if they come in later on.
Awesome. John, do you want to keep going, or you want to give the mantle to someone else?
What was it? Maybe give the mantle to someone else.
We're here. Now we see that constitutions differ from one another in kind. Yeah, who would like to proceed?
I'll read for a minute.
Let's do it.
Now we see that constitutions differ from one another in kind, and that some are subsequent and others prior, for erroneous and divergent forms are necessarily subsequent to correct forms. In what sense we employ the terms divergent of constitution will appear later. Hence, the citizen corresponding to each form of constitution will also necessarily be different. Therefore, the definition of a citizen that we have given applies especially to citizenship in a democracy. Under other forms of government, it may hold good, but will not necessarily do so. For in some states, there is no body of common citizens, and they do not have a custom of a popular assembly, but councils of specially convened members, and the office of trying lawsuits goes by sections, For example, at Sparta, suits for breach of contract are tried by different E4s in different cases, while cases of homicide are tried by the E4s and doubtless other suits by some other magistrate. The same method is not followed at Carthage, where certain magistrates judge all the lawsuits, but still our definition of a citizen admits of correction. For under the other forms of constitution, a member of the assembly and of a jury court is not an official without restriction, but an official defined according to his office. Either all of them or some among them are assigned deliberative and judicial duties either in all manners or in certain matters. What constitutes a citizen is therefore clear from these considerations. We now declare that one who has the right to participate in deliberative or judicial office is a citizen of the state in which he has that right, and a state is a collective of such persons sufficiently numerous, speaking broadly, to secure independence of life. But in practice, citizenship is limited to the child of citizens on both sides, not on one side only, that is, the child of a citizen father or of a citizen mother, and other people carry this requirement further back, for example, to the second or third preceding generation or further. But given this as a practical and hasty definition, some people raise the difficulty. How will that ancestor 3 or 4 generations back have been a citizen? Georgius of Leontini, therefore, partly perhaps in genuine perplexity, but partly in jest, said that just as the vessels are made by mortar makers were mortars, so the citizens made by the magistrates were Laurentians, since some of the magistrates were actually Larissa makers. But it is a really simple matter, for if they possessed citizenship in the manner stated in our definition of a citizen, they were real citizens, since it is clearly impossible to apply the qualification of descent from a citizen father or mother to the original colonizers or founders of a city. But perhaps a question rather arises out of those who were admitted to citizenship when a revolution had taken place, for instance, such as creation of citizens that are carried out by Athens at Callisthenes after the expulsion of the tyrants, when he enrolled in his tribes many resident aliens who had been foreigners or slaves.
By the way, Marcus, just to stop you for a quick second, this
Yeah.
probably will apply to every single person who creates a startup society, right? The fact that, if you're a founder of a city, of a startup city, a network society, whatever it may be, this is actually something that would definitely apply. So it's just you would be like the original, right? The OG, right? So it's just something to take note of. Yeah, you'd like to keep going? The dispute?
Yeah, at some point you have to derive authority just from yourself.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic.
Here, I'm interested in who is Cleisthenes. I don't know who he is. He
Yep.
was an ancient Athenian statesman who credited with reforming the constitution of ancient Athens and settling it on its democratic path. After the expulsion of the tyrant Hippias in 510 BCE, Cleisthenes emerged as a political leader who fundamentally restructured Athenian society and government. His most significant reforms included organizing citizens into 10 tribes into the traditional 4, mixing people from different regions to break down regional factions, creating the Council of 500 with 50 members from each tribe, introducing insomnia, equality under the law, as a fundamental principle, establishing the practice of ostracism to protect the state from potential tyrants. He expanded citizenship, enrolling many resident aliens, foreigners, even former slaves into his new tribal system. This radical inclusion helped strengthen Athenian democracy by broadening participation in government. Sounds like the French Revolution.
A lot of inspiration.
Yeah, but reading on, the dispute as to these is not about the fact of their citizenship, but whether they received it wrongly or rightly. Yet even as to this one, As to this, one might raise further questions, whether, if a man is not rightly a citizen, he is a citizen at all, as wrongly means the same as not truly. But we sometimes see officials governing wrongly, as to whom we shall not deny that they do govern, but shall say that they do not do it rightly. And a citizen is defined by a certain function of government. A citizen, as we said, is one who shares in such and such an office. Therefore, it is clear that even persons wrongly admitted to citizenship are to be pronounced as citizens, although the question whether they are so rightly or not rightly is connected with the question that was propounded before. For some person raised the question, when is an occurrence of the act of the state and when it is not? For example, when the government has been altered from oligarchy to tyranny to democracy. In such circumstances, some people claim that the new government should not discharge public debts on the ground that the money was borrowed by the tyrant and not by the state, and should repudiate many other similar claims also, because some forms of government rest upon force and are not aimed at the welfare of the community. If therefore some democracies also are governed in that manner, the acts of authorities in their case can only be said to be the acts of the state in the same sense as the public acts emanating from an oligarchy or a tyranny are said to be. Akin to this controversy seems to be the subject. What exactly is the principle on which we ought to pronounce a city to be the same city as it was before, but not the same, but a different city? The most obvious mode of inquiring into this difficulty deals with place and people. The place and the people may have been divided, and some may have been settled in one place and some in another. Here, that's interesting for a network state.
You want to give like a 1-2 sentences, just like a comment quickly?
Yeah, yeah, obviously geography was important, 2400 years ago, as I think mainly like communication, had to be dealt with locally. But also like the affairs of the state were all geographical, right? They're all concerned with the welfare of the people, which is going to be like food and defense. And all of that is geographical. So what was this previous line? The place and the people may have been divided, and some may have settled in one place and some in another. That was like disqualifying to be a state back in Aristotle's time, but probably not today.
Yep. You want to keep going, or you want to give the mantle to someone else?
Yeah, let's have someone else go for a bit.
Just a quick note. We have new joinees, Tranguito and Siraj. Just a brief introduction. Tranguito and Siraj. Are you guys there?
Josh, you speak.
Hey guys. There?
I just joined with the team.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, you're in the VIP room. Fantastic. The VIP room. Hey, can see you now. Fantastic.
God, technology is moving so fast, isn't it, guys? Like all this AI, gods, crazy.
Excellent.
Okay, that's Siraj there.
That's right. Hey, Siraj. And Changuito, is he also in the room, or no, somewhere else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, Changuito, if you can hear us, whenever you're ready, go ahead and you can introduce yourself, whenever. But welcome. We're supposed to have like other folks from around the world join us at some point. Hopefully, I think there's 1 or 2 folks from South America soon at some point. Sorry for the digression. Go ahead and continue.
All good. Who would like to volunteer and continue reading? We're this part right here, right?
I'm happy to take one for the team over here and
Yeah.
All
contribute.
right.
We're reading off your screen, so it'd be please continue doing the good job you are scrolling up. But okay, so the most obvious mode of inquiry, acquiring into this difficulty, deals with place and people. Okay, so I'm being given a one here. Okay, thank you. But I can't scroll on it anyway. God, we are a mess over here, guys. I'm sorry. The place and the people may have been divided, and some may have settled in one place and some in another. In this form, the question must be considered as easier of solution, for, as city has several meanings, the inquiry so put is in a way not difficult. But it may similarly be asked, suppose a set of men inhabit the same place. In what circumstances are we to consider their city to be a single city? Its unity clearly does not depend on the walls, for it would be possible to throw a single wall round the Peloponnesus, and a case in point perhaps is Babylon, and any other city that is the circuit of a nation rather than of a city. For it is said that when Babylon was captured, a considerable part of the city was not aware of it 3 days later. But the consideration of this difficulty will be serviceable for another occasion, as the study of the... could you scroll up a little bit? As the study of politics must not ignore the question, what is the most advantageous size for a city, and should its population be of one race or of several? But are we to pronounce a city where the same population inhabit the same place to be the same city so long as the population are of the same race, in spite of the fact that all the time some are dying and others are being born, just as it is our custom to say that a river or a spring is the same river or spring, although one stream of water is always being added to it and another being withdrawn from it? Or are we to say that though the people are the same people for the similar reason of continuity, yet the city is a different city? For inasmuch as a state is a kind of partnership, and is in fact a partnership of citizens in a government, when the form of the government has been altered and is different, it would appear to follow that the state is no longer the same state. Just as we say that a chorus, which on one occasion acts a comedy and on another a tragedy, is a different chorus, although it is composed of the same persons. And similarly, with any other common whole or composite structure, we say it is different if the form of its structure is different. For instance, a musical tune consisting of the same notes we call a different tune if at one time it is played in the Dorian mode and another in the Phrygian. Therefore, if this is the case, it is clear that we must speak of a state as being the same state chiefly with regard to its constitution, and it is possible for it to be called by the same or by a different designation both when its inhabitants are the same and when they are entirely different persons. But whether a state is or is not bound in justice to discharge its engagements when it has changed to a different constitution is another subject. The next thing to consider after what has now been said is the question whether we are to hold that the goodness of a good man is the same as that of a good citizen, or not the same. However, if this point really is to receive investigation, we must first ascertain in some general outline what constitutes the excellence of a citizen. Now, a citizen we pronounce to be one sort of a partner in a community, as is a sailor. And although sailors differ from each other in function, one is an oarsman, another helmsman, another lookout man, and another has some other similar special designation, and so clearly the most exact definition of their excellence will be special to each. Yet, there will also be a common definition of excellence that will apply alike to all of them, for security and navigation is the business of them all, since each of the sailors aims at that. Similarly, therefore, with the citizens, although they are dissimilar from one another, their business is in the security of their community, and this community is the constitution, so that the goodness of a citizen must necessarily be relative to the constitution of the state. If, therefore, there are various forms of constitution, it is clear that there cannot be one single goodness, which is the perfect goodness of the good citizen. But when we speak of a good man, we mean that he possesses one single goodness, perfect goodness. Hence, it is manifestly possible to be a good citizen without possessing the goodness that constitutes a good man. Moreover, it is also feasible to pursue the same topic by raising the question in another manner in relation to the best form of constitution. If it is possible for a state to consist entirely of good men, and if it is necessary for each person to perform well the work of his position, and to do this springs from goodness, then because it is impossible for all the citizens to be alike, the goodness of a good citizen would not be one and the same as the goodness of a good man, for all ought to possess the goodness of the good citizen. That is a necessary condition of the state's being the best possible. But it is impossible that all should possess the goodness of a good man if it is not necessary. Sorry, guys. You know, we are so dedicated to this. There's a party next door, and
people are dancing when they see here.
I think that don't worry, Kat, it's all good. But it is impossible that all should possess the goodness of a good man if it is not necessary that all the citizens in a good state should be good men.
Is that an Aristotle?
Oh, it's a lot. Maybe there's a good point to pause in a second and reflect. But again, since the state consists of unlike persons, just as an animal, to take this instance first, consists of soul and body and a soul of reason and appetite and a household of husband and wife, and ownership involves a master and slave, in the same manner a state consists of all these persons and also of others of different classes in addition to these. It necessarily follows that the goodness of all the citizens is not one and the same, just as among dancers the skill of a head dancer is not the same as that of a subordinate leader.
You wanna?
Yeah, I mean, the next sentence, the note, it says a state is made up of different types of people. I have a feeling that like the last 5 minutes of what I've been saying is actually quite succinctly summarized by those 6 words. But is that fair?
You wanted to reflect on this? Maybe say something in relation to the network state, or maybe in general.
I mean, maybe the question they ask a question in the next phase. He says, "It is clear then from these considerations that the goodness of a good citizen and that of a good man are not the same in general. But will the goodness of a good citizen of a particular sort be the same as that of a good man?" Are we sort of saying here that there is a distinction, like these things are potentially mutually exclusive, or like not all good men are good citizens?
This is coming down to who can have participation in governance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who can vote. A citizen taking part in politics must be wise. So this is about selecting who, citizenship doesn't confer right to participate in politics.
And we've seen this type of classes democracies previously where only a portion of the population have the right to vote. That's a model of democracy. Well, even today,
British
in different parts of the world, well, China actually.
Yeah.
China is a democracy, believe it or not, but there's only certain people that.
So we've got to decide who must be wise. So does that mean meritocracy tokens or something?
Remind me what a good man is. What's the definition of a good man? What Aristotle definition do you give of a good man?
We have to scroll off.
Was it, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make the virtuous choice.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just going to do the same, but we're just going to have transparency.
I mean, that's the argument that was used in Northern Africa after World War II.
Does David, do you have a definition of the good man from Aristotle?
Yeah, it's right here.
When man we possess a single goodness perfect. Therefore, clear one cannot be single goodness, which is the perfect goodness of a good citizen. But when we speak of a good man, we possess. Okay, so what he's saying is that that a good citizen in a democracy is not necessarily going to be a good citizen in an oligarchy or a monarchy. So, if you're a good citizen in a monarchy, you kind of shut up and do what the king says. But somebody who shuts up and does what the king says is not a good citizen in a democracy. So he says that because there's only one way to be a good man, and multiple ways to be a good citizen, that therefore a good citizen and a good man can't be the same. I don't know whether there's only one way to be a good man, to be honest. But that seems to be what Aristotle's arguing.
I think maybe he was trying to say that maybe there's not one way to be perfect. I mean, there's a lot of virtues that he talks about in his ethics in another book, but I think he's trying to like the same way that you have to. I think he's trying to do the separation between the ethics and the actual governing, deliberative, judicial, offices that we have to do, right? So a perfect man, a good man, that or person that Aristotle is saying is he virtuous in all front, right? Like does he have this virtue? Does he have that virtue? And so that I think that's what he's trying to say. And like it's impossible for everyone in a society to be like that, but there will be a few that could achieve that, right? And I think that's what he's trying to say. It's not like there's multiple like does that make sense?
Anyway, David White's put his hand up, so maybe.
David, you want us to say
David, go
something?
ahead.
Yeah, so the whole idea of citizenship is a very complex topic. I think whenever one of the things we are trying to do generally, I think everyone here is we are trying to think of new ways of governance, right? And we're trying to, you know, basically innovate governance and make it better. Now, citizenship is, I mean, there are many ways to think of it, but the way I'm thinking of it, the way I'm beginning to think of it is I think citizenship should be a choice, just like the way religion is a choice. So, for example, you might have grown up in a home where everyone is a Buddhist, for example. Everyone is, they believe in Buddhism. And along your journey in life, you experience some things and you decide, okay, I think I'm convinced that maybe Christianity, for example, is the way to go for me. And then you choose. And when you make that choice, you start to attend the churches, you start to relate with the Christian community, you start to do things, and maybe you even get married to someone in your church or in the Christian community. So if religion is like a choice, I think citizenship should also be a choice. And the reason is to bring out something from what we just read here. It's like if a group of people who decide to come together to create a new civilization or a new nation, now those people they have some founding principles. They have some agreements that these are the things we want, these are the things we allow. And even the idea on the topic of morality, it's a very complex thing because morality is it depends on the perspective, right? So if this group of people agree that this is what they like and this is what they allow, what happens in the next generation and in the third generation and in the fourth generation? What if in the fourth generation the things and the principles that they agreed upon are are like extinct and they no longer hold value, right? I can't really think of any examples. That's one scenario. What if the founding principles are outdated? I mean, okay, I can find an example. For example, maybe the founding principles were that men should be the leaders in key positions, right? And the first generation is gone, second generation is gone, third generation is gone, fourth generation is gone. And now everybody is like, you know what, we should move past that, right? What if that doesn't make any sense and there's no real argument for that? And, blah, blah, blah. That's one scenario. Second scenario is if you have a bunch of people that are citizens of a nation, I can't remember who was the last person who spoke. The person rightly said, everyone cannot have the same way of thinking. What if their children are not in line with their parents' ideology? Or what if some of the children are not in line with that ideology? What that creates is division. And when a nation is divided, it starts to fight itself internally. And I'm sorry I have to use this example, but just look at America, right? Look at America today. Compared to China, America is divided. In fact, when I look at the news sometimes, I feel like, why don't Americans just create two countries, right? Let the people on the left go to it, the country on the left. Let the guys on the right go to the country on the right. Let them just take a ruler and a pencil and just divide the map of America and create two separate countries. And then there will be peace instead of everyone fighting each other. So if you start to have children that do not agree with the founding principles, it will cause division. What I propose is that those children who do not believe in the founding principles, let them not be citizens of the nation. To be a citizen of the nation, you have to agree with the principles of the nation. So when you are 18, when everyone is 18, they should take a test. They should take a test that checks whether you agree with the ideology and the principles of the nation. If you fail that test, then you are not a citizen. And we'll now have to figure out what to do with you, whether we tell you to go to another country, or we deport you, or we limit your rights and your activities. But if you pass that test, the test could be at 14. It doesn't have to be 18. It could be at age 14. If you pass that test, then you're a part of the citizen. Because I think when you have a society where there are different ideologies, some people think eating rice is bad, some people think eating meat is the way to go, and then you start having fights, and then it just becomes a divided state, just like what we have in America today. America started with founding principles. Everyone was on the same page. There was no division. Even if people differed in their ways of thinking, it wasn't as crazy as it is right now. Right now, it's almost like a civil war is almost probably inevitable in America, right? So that's just my take on citizenship. It should be by choice, and um it should be based on ideology. And the fact that you were born into a family and born into a particular location doesn't mean you be a citizen. You should choose whether you want to be a citizen or not.
I think that if you so what I would say is I think if you go for that thing where if you don't agree with the initial founding principles of the country, then you don't remain a citizen. I think that would need to be accompanied by some uh, some very uh, some very clear method of starting a new country and founding new territories. For example, like I mean, I think it might be. I mean, in that kind of situation, if you had like no man's lands, like because the problem now is that every single plot of land on planet Earth is pretty much owned by a country. So if you had like areas with low population density, maybe just spontaneously become no man's lands, or maybe you make it like, or maybe you make it, maybe force countries. If you force countries to like, I don't know, pay the UN for every acre they claim as territory, then maybe they'd start claiming as much as they possibly could, and they might say, you know what, I'm just going to leave that, and you may end up with like country areas. If it actually costs money to maintain territory, that you might actually end up with areas where no one claims as territory. And if there's no man's land and people can found new territories and found new countries, under those circumstances, I think I think saying sort of saying if you don't pass the citizenship test, then you don't become a citizen is potentially reasonable. But if you have a situation where every little square foot of earth is claimed by a country, then what do the people who fail the citizenship test of their own country do? Really, I mean.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, John. I'm a Brit, and I'm a big fan of the Australians and the function of Australia in us being able to get rid of all the all the brilliance that we had in our empire and give them an opportunity to start over. But more seriously, like again, I think exile is a really important function of like the opt-in, but it being a double opt-in, and that being able to be withdrawn by either party at any point is potentially very important. then the question is, where do people go? And there not being a place to exile people to is sort of interesting. I like that idea of everyone having to rent land off everyone else effectively. Seems a bit hard to implement now, but would be nice.
Yep.
As a descendant of the early settlers of Australia, not the convicts.
Sorry, can you hear us?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
So the exile was seen as an opportunity to become a citizen, as opposed to being exiled. So I always referred to the Poms as the prisoners of Mother England, because they're the ones who are still stuck there, as opposed to the ones that were extradited. And but it is an interesting concept. And I think if we look at Commonwealth countries, what we call Australia and New Zealand today, we could probably learn a little bit about how a series of states that were settled by different groups of people came together and became federated. And one of the reasons that there are a number of drivers for federation of the states in Australia. One of them was infrastructure, national level infrastructure, because when they built the first railroad between Melbourne and Sydney, they got to the border and the tracks were different sizes. So the train, they literally had to pick the rail cars off, take the wheels off, put them onto a different set. Like, it was just absolutely insane. And these were engineers that have been building railroads all over the world. So there were reasons for federation, very good reasons. When it came to who is a citizen and what the citizens' rights and responsibilities were, if we look at the population that we're talking about, whether it's 1901, 1903, around that time, or the philosophy that we're reading, going back to those principles of who has the right to be a citizen and what those citizen rights involve, and that the ability to participate in government, I think we're dealing with smaller populations with greater diversity, if I may say it that way. Being female, I grew up with the we had to vote in Australia. It's compulsory. That's something that a lot of females still don't get to do. It never occurred to me that was something that people would have to come out and fight for. So I think this concept of exile is something, or if we take a network state and we find that there are nefarious actors within the state and they have chosen to be here and they've been involved and been granted citizenship rights, then yes, how do you police it? Because exile is a very serious thing. And also, if we think about births, deaths, and marriages, if we're setting up a constitution for a network state and we're looking at people having children, then you inherit the citizenship of your parents, usually, but should that actually apply to the network state? Do you all want your children to have network state citizenship automatically because they're your children?
Australia can't make someone stateless.
No. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. If you have let's say someone is only a citizen of a network state, for example, let's say you have a member of a network state, two parents of a network state who live who are descended from a country where the citizenship by birth rather than by descent.
Yeah.
So the only way that you become a citizen of the country is if you're born on the land of the country, and the descent doesn't count for anything. If those two parents have a child who's in the network state, then that child may only be a citizen of the network state. So if you just take away their citizenship, they'll be stateless. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, connected to that, unless we want to move on, but it's something I think about all the time, in that I'm planning to be a dictator, and I think that if you're going to do that, it's very important that you're not really a dictator and that your citizens can truly leave. And I think a lot about exit technology and increasing liquidity across borders so that it's easier for people to flee bad governance. And actually, to your point just then, John, it's like if the child is born in that network state and their nationality is only that network state, then they don't have a right to exit anywhere else. And so I think a lot about people, it being a requirement that you have an ability to live somewhere else if you wanted to live, for example, at a future arc, because you have that, having that optionality. If you don't have that optionality, then I mean, you can never really leave, right? You are hostage. So it's just an interesting side point or main point.
This just keeps coming. Oh, now it's on. Sorry.
Great points, guys. Who wants to continue with the reading? Maybe from Electra's room. Anyone who wants to volunteer?
Yeah, okay. Where are we up to?
Now that we say that a good ruler is virtuous and wise.
Okay, yeah, I found this interesting because I was wondering about. Anyway, let's reflect on this opening sentence. Now we say that a good ruler is virtuous and wise, and that a citizen taking part in politics must be wise. So you got to earn your right to vote. Some people say that even the education of a ruler must be different, as indeed we see that the sons of kings are educated in horsemanship and military exercises, and Euripides says, "No subtleties for me, but what the state requireth," implying that there is a special education for a ruler. And if the goodness of a good ruler is the same as the goodness of a good man, yet the person ruled is also a citizen, so that the goodness of a citizen in general will not be the same as that of a man, although that of a particular citizen will, for goodness as a ruler is not the same as goodness as a citizen. And no doubt this is the reason why Jason said that when he was not a tyrant, he went hungry, meaning that he didn't know the art of being a private person. Another point is that we praise the ability to rule and to be ruled, and it is doubtless held that the goodness of a citizen consists in ability both to rule and to be ruled well. If then we lay it down that the goodness of the good man is displayed in ruling, whereas that of the citizen is shown in both capacities, the two capacities cannot be equally laudable. It's like Jedi. Since therefore both views are sometimes accepted, and it is thought that the ruler and the subject do not have to learn the same arts, but that the citizen must know both arts and share in both capacities. And it may be discerned from the following illustration. One form of authority is that of a master, by which we mean the exercise of authority in regard to the necessary work of the house, which it is not necessary for the master to know how to execute, but rather how to utilize. The other capacity, I mean the ability to actually serve in these menial tasks, is indeed a slave's quality. But we distinguish several kinds of slave, as their employments are several. One department belongs to the handcraftsmen, whose, as their name implies, are the persons that live by their hands, a class that includes the mechanic artisan. Hence, in some states, manual labourers were not admitted to office in old times, before the development of extreme democracy. The tasks of those who are under this form of authority, therefore, it is not proper for the good man or the man fit for citizenship or the good citizen to learn, except for his own private use occasionally, for then it ceases to be a case of one party being master and the other slave. But there exists a form of authority by which a man rules over persons of the same race as himself and free men, for that's how we describe political authority, and this the ruler should learn by being ruled, just as a man should command cavalry after having served as a trooper, command a regiment after having served in a regiment, and been in command of a company and of a platoon.
Just a small note here. This actually reminds me, I don't know if I'm sure everyone has already, but if you remember that scene from Game of Thrones where Jon Snow is being, not really punished, but like kind of castigated by, what's his name from the Watch? Lord, is it Mormont, or the one who gives him the big sword? He basically says like, he says something like this: if you want to learn how to lead, like learn to follow, something like that. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Yeah.
This kind of like
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of this. Like usually, like we think like, oh, the ruler, like this ruler, you know, he has to come up like maybe as a tyrant, like he takes it by force, and then like he becomes a ruler. But here, interestingly, Aristotle is saying you should learn by being ruled. It's
That's
like,
right. So James, you can't go and be a dictator until you've spent being a lot of network states.
I'm going to go here, and he's okay. Got to spend more time here, right? Yeah.
It's interesting. Do we have any other military?
I mean, it's basically like if you're not ruled, then you don't understand what pisses people off. Like if you've never been ruled yourself, you don't understand when the ruler is doing something that really pisses people off. And then when you become a ruler, you might do things that piss people off and not realize it.
yeah. And here it continues. You want to continue? I don't know who was reading.
Oh,
Continue.
would someone else like to? Because I think I wrapped up at a good point there. I think it's a really good point. This is just on the.
Kate's from the military.
No, not from the. No. I was in the Army Reserve in Australia. I was a signals corps officer. So I think this is a really good point because there is no way that I could have learned the skills, the requirements to be a leader in that environment had I not gone through all of the basic stuff. And it was you also, when you go through that type of training, you're trained in what they call general service. So my final exams were about could I lead a military or infantry platoon attack. Now that was something that I would most likely never have to do. It was something that I fortunately never had to do and I really didn't want to do. At the same time, I had to be prepared to do that, and that was what I was judged on. That was my terminal examination. And then I went off and did all of the actual stuff that I wanted to do with satellites and Ethernet portals and hooking up stuff and all the really cool stuff. But I do believe that better leaders are produced when they have done the job themselves. It's a little bit like founding a startup. You're the guys writing the code. You can understand that process, so you can manage time more effectively. You can manage teams more effectively as a result. You might have a vision. You also understand that there's a creative process that goes on. So when you work in a team, if you have gone through a similar skill set or a similar training, you understand the pressure, you understand time and space. You understand the resource requirements. You understand when someone's performing well and when they're not. And I do believe it's a really important point here.
So is Aristotle saying that it shouldn't be a birthright to be a leader? Like, the monarchy system?
Well, it's interesting because I think we have to put it into context of the time frame. There was a philosophy at one point in time where people were tested and divided up into different sections, and that would be their section in society. So you had, and someone who will have a better memory than mine, I only touched on philosophy for a couple of semesters. You had people who were tested to be philosopher kings, and then you had people who were tested to be part of the auxiliaries. So they would be the support functions, and they would go into military or civil service, other forms of civil service. Then you had tradespeople who were basically there to do everything else that society needed. So there was this very distinct class system based on a test, and there was no way that you could jump from one position to another. So I think if we put that into context and then we look here at the training of kings, yes, I do think that leaders, I think that there are personality types that are more suited to certain types of leadership. And I do think that there are some people that are just not suitable, that they don't have the self-efficacy to be able to lead. I do believe that because I've seen it. But when you go through this training, you work out pretty quickly where you're going to sit. So I do believe there's some baseline in a human being, but I also believe that leaders can be trained, and that better leaders are produced as a result of going through that training yourself. So I'm not sure what he's. Yeah, I'm not sure what he's.
Kind of repeats a bit through this section. He's kind of
Yeah, he continues, just to finish off the thought here. Hence, there is much truth in the saying that it is impossible to become a good ruler without having been a subject. And although the goodness of a ruler and that of a subject are different, the good citizen must have the knowledge and the ability both to be ruled and to rule. And the merit of the good citizen consists in having knowledge of the government of free men on both sides.
Yeah.
I think that this is very, very interesting. I mean, we have to consider ourselves as equal, like in that sense. Like everyone is free on that sense. And in some societies, we don't really see that, right? So, especially in the Western world, we have a lot of individuals, groups of people. Obviously, they feel superior, and actually, Aristotle is talking about this later when we talk about the different forms of government. But basically, there's classes of individuals who see themselves as superior because they have more money. And this is like where the bad form of oligarchies come about, and then they actually corrupt governments. But we'll study in a bit exactly what that looks like. But it's just a very interesting topic. So I'm actually going to go ahead and actually go inside of we're going to skip a little bit, and we're going to go, just for the sake of time, we'll go actually into the different forms of constitution. And so actually Aristotle has a six-fold classification. He actually breaks it down with 3 positive and 3 deviations or not so good ones. And actually this is one of my favorite parts of this book, book number 3, and it brings so much light, and everything makes sense when we actually start. Who wants to begin on constitutions?
Hey, what did you read?
Any volunteers?
Do you want to read something? No, I'll keep reading. Do you want me to keep reading? All right then. Okay. On constitutions, the six-fold classification. It is clear then that those constitutions that aim at the common advantage are in effect rightly framed in accordance with absolute justice, while those that aim at the ruler's own advantage only are faulty, and are all of them deviations from the right constitutions, for they have an element of despotism, whereas a city is a partnership of free men. These matters having been determined, the next step is to consider how many forms of the constitutions there are and what they are, and first to study the right forms of constitution, since the deviations will also become manifest when these are defined. But in as much as constitution means the same as government, and the government is the supreme power in the state, and this must be either a single ruler or a few, or the mass of the citizens, in cases where the one or the few or the many govern with an eye to the common interest, these constitutions must necessarily be the right ones, while those administered with an eye to the private interest of either one or the few of the multitude are deviations. For either, we must not say that those who are part of the state are citizens, or those who are part of the state must share in the advantage of membership. Sorry, I've got to understand that again. For either, we must not say that those who are part of the state are citizens, or those who are part of the state must share in the advantage of membership. Either we accept that all members of a state are citizens, or we ensure that everyone who belongs to the state benefits from being part of it. Okay. Our customary designation for a monarchy that aims at the common advantage is kingship. For a government of more than one, yet only a few, aristocracy, either because the best men rule or because they rule with a view to what is best for the state and its members. While when the multitude govern the state with a view to the common advantage, it is called by the name common to all the forms of constitution, constitutional government. And this comes about reasonably, since although it is possible for one man or a few to excel in virtue, when the number is larger, it becomes difficult for them to possess perfect excellence in respect of every form of virtue. But they can be the best They can best excel in military valor, for this is found with numbers. And therefore, with this form of constitution, the class that fights for the state in war is the most powerful, and it is those who possess arms who are admitted to the government. Deviations from the constitutions mentioned are tyranny corresponding to kingship, oligarchy to aristocracy, and democracy to constitutional government. For tyranny is monarchy ruling in the interests of the monarch, oligarchy government in the interests of the rich, democracy government in the interest of the poor, and none of these forms govern with regard to the profit of the community. But it is necessary to say at a little greater length what each of these constitutions is. For the question involves certain difficulties, and it is the special mark of the one who studies any subject philosophically, and not solely with regard to its practical aspect, that he does not overlook or omit any point, but brings to light the truth about each. Tyranny, as it's been said, is monarchy exerting despotic power over the political community. Oligarchy is when the control of the government is in the hands of those that own the properties. Democracy is when, on the contrary, it is in the hands of those that do not possess much property but are poor. Do we want to stop here or keep going? What do we think about these constitutions?
If you want to, if you have any thoughts, if anyone else in the audience has any thoughts, please.
Do we recognize democracy is when the government is controlled by people who have little wealth and are poor? That's opposite of socialism, isn't it? I don't know. Do we recognize Aristotle's democracy today?
He also seems to be saying that democracy is the tyrannical form of a constitutional like government.
Like a negative form almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the definitions maybe today are completely different, which is interesting because like that's maybe why it gets so chaotic, or I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, Aristotle lived in a world where there's slaves, so the thing is that slaves aren't going to vote to be slaves. At like so it, like I mean, I think one of the things of ancient Greece is that like the reason you had Greek philosophers in the first place is because you had this hierarchical class system. So you had these people at the top who kind of hang around getting served by slaves, and they had time to like think, and they had time to kind of govern and do all that kind of stuff. And in the Greek system, if the slaves stopped serving them, then they'd have to do boring housework. They wouldn't be able to be the master of the house. They wouldn't be able to sort of write philosophy and all that kind of stuff. However, today, of course, we have machines, so maybe expanding the franchise isn't so bad because machines kind of potentially save people time anyway.
Yeah, so according to Aristotle, the opposite of democracy was polity, which is more of rule by many moderate rulers, whereas his definition of democracy probably deviates from our modern definition in that the Aristotle definition is more around, I think, many poor. I think the text also says it's many poor folks. There is to some extent a distinction based on the ownership of property or lack of property in those cases. And arguably for Aristotle, that was it's a negative if you have too many of the poor. I think John mentioned slaves and now again it's a different context, a different time compared to present day. And at the time, they would see more of it as a negative as opposed to positive.
A point that's really interesting here for me is he's doing a lot of classification. But he's saying that like the same constitution can lead to a good and virtuous government, or it can lead to a tyrannical government. I haven't read much Aristotle. Does he talk much about like how to cultivate virtue in society so that you don't devolve into these more tyrannical forms? Like, I think he's saying that, you know, even if your constitution is perfect, right? If the virtue of the leaders is bad, it will devolve.
Yeah, I think this is the book on ethics that it's a completely separate work, and it's all about the different virtues that a person should have and cultivate throughout his life. And it's like a whole life's work. Like, yeah, like a, to be able to refine like the animal soul, to be able to go ahead and, not be hungry for power and, all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's an interesting idea, like how, in a way, like even your private life is politics, because you have to govern yourself. We have to govern ourselves. We have to go within our own, bodies. We have two different things. One things that are, I think even Balajis talks about this, about like, having your meta self not wanting to eat that chocolate, or your meta self not wanting to, do certain things, right? And so I think like, that's like the first order of politics, and that's the work of ethics, right? And once a person is able to go ahead and do that, then they go to the community, and from the community they go to a country or a nation or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, it's this is only book number 3 of politics, and I haven't read the other, but I mean, like I think it's like a 6-7 books in one work, and then ethics is like a separate work onto itself, right?
Also,
but yeah.
Also, it's worth. Sorry, I was going to say. Also, it's worth mentioning that the democracy that Aristotle's talking about is a fully participatory democracy, whereas the democracy that we live in right now is a representative democracy. So I think I think what he wanted from a polity was, he thought that only the best should rule society, and then the polity, like everyone who's like reasonably good and reasonably wealthy gets gets to a say in the thing, and they just want poor people and everyone to just have a say in governance in a direct way. Whereas today we kind of live in a society where it's rather similar, actually, that really quite a small handful of people actually are the representatives that actually do the governing, and everyone else just ticks a box once every 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's also saying, like, he defined what a good citizen was before. I think he's saying that democracy discounts that, doesn't take that into account. So that everyone gets a vote, whether they're a good citizen or a bad citizen. And that kind of sees the flaws in that.
I think he'll delineate even more right now as we read. So if you want to keep reading, who wants to volunteer?
Would someone like to continue reading?
Yeah, you could also read if you want.
I'll continue. No one wants to. Okay, I'll read until someone interrupts. Okay, a first difficulty is regard to the definition. So, if the majority of citizens were wealthy and were in control of the state, yet when the multitude is in power, it is democracy. And similarly, to take the other case, if it were to occur somewhere that the poor were fewer than the rich, but were stronger than they were and accordingly were in control of the government, yet where a small number is in control, it is said to be an oligarchy. Then it would be seen that our definition of the forms of constitution was not a good one. And once again, if one assumed that the combination of small numbers with wealth and of multitude with poverty, and named the constitutions thus, one in which the rich being few in number hold the offices, oligarchy, one in which the poor being many in number hold the offices, democracy. This involves another difficulty. What names are we to give to the constitutions just described? The one in which there are more rich and the one in which the poor are the fewer, and these control their respective governments, if there exists no other form of constitution beside those mentioned. The argument, therefore, seems to make it clear that for few or many to have power is an accidental feature of oligarchies in the one case and democracies in the other, due to the fact that the rich are few and the poor are many everywhere, so that it is not really the case that the points mentioned constitute a specific difference, but that the real thing in which democracy and oligarchy differ from each other is poverty and wealth. So it depends on distribution of wealth. So it necessarily follows that wherever the rulers owe their power to wealth, whether they be a minority or a majority, this is an oligarchy. And when the poor rule, it is a democracy. although it does accidentally happen, as we said, and that where the rulers hold power by wealth, they are few, and where they hold power by poverty, they are many. Oh, yeah, that's true in Australia. Because few men are rich, but all men possess freedom, and wealth and freedom are the grounds on which the two classes lay claim to the government. So I threw that in because we have a really big government at the moment. We have a very big, over-bloated government. And first we must ascertain what are stated to be the determining qualities of oligarchy and democracy, and what is the principle of justice under the one form of government and under the other. For all men lay hold on justice of some sort, but they only advance to a certain point and do not express the principle of absolute justice in its entirety. For instance, it's thought that justice is equality, and so it is, though not for everybody, but only for those who are equals. And it is thought that inequality is just, for so indeed it is, though not for everybody, but for those who are unequal. But these partisans strip away the qualification of the persons concerned and judge badly. And the cause of this is that they are themselves concerned in the decision. And perhaps most men are bad judges when their own interests are in question. Hence, inasmuch as just means just for certain persons, and it is divided in the same way in relation to the things to be distributed and the persons that receive them, as has been said before in the ethics, the two parties agree as to what constitutes equality in the thing, but dispute as to what constitutes equality in the person, chiefly for the reason just now stated, because men are bad judges where they themselves are concerned, but also inasmuch as both parties put forward a plea that is just up to a certain point, they think that what they say is absolutely just. For the one side thinks that if they are unequal in some respects, for instance in wealth, they are entirely unequal. And the other side think that if they are equal in some respects, for instance in freedom, then they are entirely equal. But the most important thing they do not mention, if men formed the community and came together for the sake of wealth, their share in the state is proportionate to their share in the property, so that the argument of the champions of oligarchy would appear to be valid, namely that in a partnership with a capital of 100 minae, it would not be just for the man who contributed 1 minae to have a share, whether of the principal or of the profits accruing, equal to the share of the man who supplied the whole of the remainder. What does that mean in a network state?
It means that if someone it means that if someone puts a lot of money into something, they deserve more of the output, basically.
I think there's controversy about this in DAOs, right? Like how people vote, for proposals, for example, like with Uniswaps, and there was a huge controversy with like A16Z, voting a proposition, and like there were other people involved. I mean, it's for the community. It's completely decentralized, but they had like a completely unfair advantage, and I think there's like a huge disconnect of or misexpectation between that. But I think like a good example of would be a DAO. Like maybe we could open up that note specifically, like how you provide that. Maybe someone.
Yeah, and in some political systems, what happens is wealthy people are expected to do, to be beneficent for the public good. But at the end of the day, what they expect also often is to gain influence as a result of their donations. And the idea of, I think the idea is basically that if you tax the hell out of someone and then don't give them anything back, like you don't even give them a stake in the society after taxing the hell out of them, then they're not going to stick around for long. They're going to like get the hell out because they're just not going to want to stay in a society like that. That kind of for people that generally speaking, if people pay a large amount of money, a much larger amount of their money to a given good, they tend to expect some kind of greater degree of influence or a greater degree of gratitude for that greater donation. So I think that's what Aristotle's saying.
Anyone else on this?
Haven't we like recreated that though with a public corporation, right? So he's saying that when men come together in the interest of creating wealth, that, the person who puts, the most input will get the most return. Like that's just stocks in a public corporation. You could see that as um, a political entity. You could see it as like quasi state, as far as like an organization of people coming together for, a common purpose.
A great example.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. It's not behaving. I don't know what's happening here.
You'll be being hacked.
Yeah, get out of here. Can I just turn off
Where
my
did it go?
internet? I'm just going to turn off my internet.
No, wait, no, it's just here. Is it just here?
What is it? I've got it.
The Zoom? Is it just? Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No.
Where's the call? Oh, no, it's there. Yeah, the call's this one there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we're still
Yeah.
going. It just
Okay.
was.
Sorry.
Sorry, drama. We're back.
Okay.
I might have a comment, but maybe in a couple of paragraphs, because I'm just basically interested in the juxtaposition here between like, he's almost like sort of seems to be like setting up oligarchy to maybe be a, I don't know, I can't know, but if there's all these slaves in society, when you're presenting like democracy as sort of like the point where like all of these poorer people that are free or not free are all equal, like that seems that wouldn't be what's happening in Athens right now. So that therefore is he like setting up oligarchy here to be more just? But then they did have something, I don't know. I'm interested to keep reading basically.
Yeah. You want to read it for now, or?
I mean, you have to just keep in mind that that Aristotle was an aristocrat. Like he was like all of those philosophers were comparatively well off. They were like nobility in the societies they grew up in. So they all derived personal benefit from slaves. So they're going to be pretty biased in terms of their opinions on that. Because if all the slaves went away, they have to do a lot more manual work.
Agree. Okay, so we got to but, right?
Right.
On the other hand, the state was formed not for the sake of life only, but rather for the good life. For otherwise, a collection of slaves with lower animals would be a state. But as it is not a state, because slaves and animals have no share in well-being or in purposive life. And if its object is not military alliance for defense against injury by anybody, and it does not exist for the sake of trade and of business relations, for if so, Etruscans and Carthaginians and all the people that have commercial relations with one another would be virtually citizens of a single state. At all events, they have agreements about imports and covenants as to abstaining from dishonesty and treaties of alliance for mutual defense. But they do not have officials common to them, all appointed to enforce these covenants, but different officials with either party, nor yet does either party take any concern as to the proper moral character of the other, nor attempt to secure that nobody in the states under the covenant shall be dishonest or in any way immoral, but only that they shall not commit any wrong against each other. All those, on the other hand, who are concerned about good government do take civic virtue and vice into their purview. Thus it is also clear that any state that is truly so called and is not a state merely in name must pay attention to virtue, for otherwise the community becomes merely an alliance, differing only in locality from the other alliances, those of allies that live apart. And the law is a covenant, or in the phrase of the sophist Lycophron, a guarantee of men's just claims on one another, but it is not designed to make the citizens virtuous and just. And this is how the matter stands is manifest. For if one were actually to bring the sites of two cities together into one, so that the city walls of Megara and those of Corinth were contiguous, even so they would not be one city, nor would they if they enacted rights of intermarriage with each other, although intermarriage between citizens is one of the elements of community which are characteristic of states. And similarly, even if certain people lived in separate places, yet not so far apart as not to have intercourse, but had laws to prevent their wrongdoing one another in their interchange of products. For instance, if one man were a carpenter, another a farmer, another a shoemaker, and another something else of the kind, and the whole population numbered 10,000, but nevertheless they had no mutual dealings in anything else except such things as exchange of commodities and military alliance, even then this would still not be a state. When then exactly is the reason for this? For clearly it is not because their intercourse is from a distance, since even if they came together for intercourse of this sort, each nevertheless using his individual house as a city, and for one another's military aid against wrongful aggressors only, as under a defensive alliance, not even then would they seem to those who consider the matter carefully to constitute a state, if they associated on the same footing when they came together as they did when they were apart. It is manifest, therefore, that a state is not merely the sharing of a common locality for the purpose of preventing mutual injury and exchanging goods. These are necessary preconditions of a state's existence, yet, nevertheless, even if all these conditions are present, that does not therefore make a state, but a state is a partnership of families and of clans in living well, and its object is a full and independent life. At the same time, this will not be realized unless the partners do inhabit one and the same locality and practice intermarriage. This indeed is the reason why family relationships have arisen throughout the states, and brotherhoods and clubs for sacrificial rites and social recreations. But such organization is produced by the feeling of friendship, for friendship is the motive of social life. Therefore, while the object of a state is the good life, these things are means to that end. And a state is the partnership of clans and villages in a full and independent life, which in our view constitutes a happy and noble life. The political fellowship must therefore be deemed to exist for the sake of noble actions, not merely for living in common. Hence, those who contribute most to such fellowship have a large part in the state than those who are their equals or superiors in freedom and birth, but not their equals in civic virtue, or than those who surpass them in wealth, but are surpassed by them in virtue. It is therefore clear. Sorry, I can't. Sorry, that one's covered up the. That's covered up the writing. Sorry. It is therefore clear that what has been said, that all those who dispute about the forms of constitution assert a part of the just principle. Okay, awesome. So he seems to bring in not just wealth and not just sort of some value as being a unique individual, but some value in your ability to be like civically virtuous is maybe more important than those.
The good life.
And socializing.
In the pub?
Yeah. Define what is a virtuous citizen.
Well, this is what's just so interesting about all of it. I can't remember. I mean, I studied Aristotle at university, but I can't remember any of it. But just with the backdrop, right, again, of this society running on slaves, to maybe connect it to network states, it's sort of like one of the interesting things with where we are here in NS. Or did you just connect this to like the trend of digital nomads? If there wasn't a cost arbitrage for that lifestyle, where you're able to live off a typically poorer, less educated underclass, for want of a slightly more diplomatic way of putting it, in all of these more developing nations, I mean, digital nomads would be 95% less. It's sort of your like ability to leverage, like, you know, again, being provocative, like a modern form of slavery. Maybe it's not that in name, but you know, in servitude. You know, here we benefit from the fact that you can hire someone for $200 a month. And like, is there a difference? And do you actually allow greatness in those situations? You know, the fact that we can pay people $200 a month means that we can sit here and chat about philosophy on a Friday evening drinking wine. You know, I don't know. I'm just sort of kind of questioning on one side. You know, Aristotle here lecturing us about the virtues of civics while sat there being tended to by slaves. But I'm mindful of the people in the corridor that are cleaning the mess off the corridor whilst everyone's running around drunk here at NS. So sort of juxtaposing those things.
yeah, I do think.
I think that like for example in TDF, I don't think you need a slave class. I mean in TDF we do about maybe like 4 hours volunteering a day, and then hang around chatting and doing sort of and talking about philosophy as well. I don't think you need a slave class. You need to reduce your standards. For example, TDF is kind of a bit of a campsite, so it's like a bit of a it's like a ruined chicken factory. It's got we've got some glamping, that kind of stuff. So it's not like the structures aren't it's not as plush, I guess, as what you say in here. But I think you can do philosophy. You got two choices with philosophy, really. You can either have slaves, or you can choose frugality. Like if you do the wasn't it Diogenes who lived in a barrel? So Diogenes is an example of a philosopher who didn't have any slaves, but because he was very frugal, he was just like, screw it, I'm not going to spend my time doing menial stuff. I'm just going to like live in a barrel and think and kind of and like the hermits, monks, aesthetics of all kinds. They kind of choose the other route where they stop, where they don't ask anyone to look after them, but they don't put as much effort into uh, advancing their own material well-being, and as a result of making a personal sacrifice in well-being, they hang around kind of just chatting. So there's the aesthetic route as well as the sort of slave route. I guess David White's talking
Yeah,
now.
I think.
I was gonna say, a good citizen is one who sort of adheres to like the ethos of the society. So like, I think yes, discussing philosophy on a Friday night is exactly what they would want us to be doing here. And while it's a bit meta, because we're talking about like what a good citizen is while trying to start a new thing. Yeah, I think that's what they envision for us, and what we're kind of electing to do by living here and participating.
For the defense of NS, I don't think we're not after having people cleaning the floor after us. We're much more interested in making them unemployed and using robots instead. David, you have your hand.
Yeah, I think the issue with slavery is that slaves don't share the same vision as the rest of the citizens. And so if you multiply that by thousands or millions, what we are basically saying is that I have millions of people in my nation. It might be digital, it might be decentralized, it might be centralized in one location, it might be like a new country. But basically, you're saying I have millions of people that don't agree with the ideology of the society, that don't agree necessarily with the culture of the society, and that are not interested in the progress of the society, but then they are part of the society, they are intermingling with people in society, and definitely people would have sex with slaves, right? It's going to happen. You're going to have probably children of the masters that will be in their teenage age, and they would like to, they'll play around. And what now happens is, okay, so the people start having children with the slaves, and what happens when people start to rebel? So basically, it's just a recipe for dividing the nation. I think the best thing is to employ people, and of course that's going to be a difficult thing when the standard of living in that environment or that society is high. So let's say all of the citizens in nation A are used to earning $2,000 a month, right? No, $2,000 small. Let's say $3,000 a month, right? Or $4,000 a month. Everyone is like, this is like the average across the nation. Now, how do you have slaves when you have people earning $4,000 a month, right? that's like expensive, and you would hire those people to mop the floors, to cook, to babysit, to do this, to do that. So I mean, I think if you can't afford that, then the society should have like a culture of not having excess. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just know that slavery is like a recipe to division. It's going to cause division at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I'd say you're absolutely right. I'm totally against slavery. I think it's important to understand that Aristotle benefited from slavery. So when we read Aristotle, it's worth taking into account that some of his views are going to be shaped by the fact that his society did use slaves for work, and that's not necessarily to say that we need to agree with Aristotle. In fact, it might be reason to say that yes, Aristotle was very, very intelligent, and he probably got a lot of things right, but he probably also got a lot of things wrong. And it's worth keeping in mind that he benefited from slavery, because it's just worth being aware of his biases. Really, I'm not. I don't think slavery is good.
Yep. So guys, right now we just came up with the time for the study itself. So let me just tell you what are the next steps. So we'll be taking a 15-minute break. Okay. So go to the bathroom, drink something, walk. Do as you wish. The second part of this session, we'll actually have an agora, so open discussion based on our text. We have some topics of conversation that we could go ahead and choose together. You could discuss it. You could debate it. We'll go ahead and pick a couple of topics for 45 minutes, and then the most exciting thing, and this is part of the grander vision of Edeneum, and of course the network, school and everything. Personally, that is something that I really care about, is actually to put it into practice, right? To actually come up with something tangible, to actually create something, an actual startup society. And so the last part would be to actually draft a founding document based on these principles. So we have the 3 right constitutions, the 3 Devan forms, the core principles that we have. And so based on what we learned, we will go ahead and see how to draft the document, right? So what is the ultimate purpose, the good life, or the one commandment that Balajis, keeps talking about? Who has or what power, why? How do you prevent corruption of the original mission, which is, I think some people brought it up while we were reading. And then what are the non-negotiable principles versus adaptable practices, for example, slavery. So this is basically the second part. We'll begin the timer right now. So see you guys in 15 minutes.
Oh.
Like some water. Oh yeah, grab some water. Well, this is intense. When I was in primary school, my favourite game that I made up was comprehension, where I read out really boring books in the playground, and everyone had to explain something that they remembered from what I just read out. I was really popular in grade 3.
You organized that?
Yeah. Let's play comprehension. So this is just like, here we are. This is where we end up.
Very good.
Right. Back in 5 minutes.
It's very
Walk around
interesting. I
for
have
1
not
second.
spent this kind of time on Aristotle. I've just read it and tried to write essays.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Years ago. And
No, I definitely took a credit bearing course in Aristotle, and I took it just for moments like this, so that I could talk about it.
I thought it was more like Plato. Plato was.
Well, no, yeah. I think it's
you have to earn your right.
Aristotle's student was Socrates, whose student was Plato.
Right. Okay, so this is where they.
I think, because Aristotle is potentially the last man that knew everything there was to know. When there was, the corpus of human knowledge was so much smaller that it was possible for an individual. No, that's probably not true still, because there's probably all sorts of fun stuff happening in other parts of the world. But Yes, and then Aristotle wrote his own stuff, right? Whereas Socrates didn't write anything, and we only know about Socrates through Plato. But I can't remember which one.
Do you have a word for Eric?
Yeah. I have an intern giving a demo.
And what?
An intern giving a demo.
An intern giving a demo. Oh, they must be nervous.
I'm not nervous.
No, well, it sounds like an easy call for you, not so much for the intern.
Maybe because there's the boss checking on him while I'm here.
Okay.
I guess if it's really bad, then he can ask me, what are you doing?
So it's up to you to judge the intern tonight.
Yeah, maybe. It's fine. It's not the final demo.
Oh, so we're going to do a demo of their coding skills or something.
Yeah. Should be fine. Like he received the hardware like 2 weeks ago, and he got the final SDK working like today. Because the factory gave us some random SDK. That's fine.
That was weird when that thing popped up. I wasn't thinking, damn it. But I just went through all my security settings and just nothing and logged in. I just changed passwords, changed passkey, just did a clean up.
I
Nothing.
think you had a Drive, Google Drive.
Yeah, it was a Google Drive just being.
Well, I mean, Google does that regularly. It's just like,
Google, I hate Google. I hate Microsoft just as much.
Definitely hate Microsoft more, but I hate them all.
But I have clients who don't really use Microsoft.
But you have Windows, right?
But I also have Proton. Like I do most of my stuff on Proton. Like my real stuff is on Proton Drive. I use Proton VPN. I do my client meetings on like Signal and Telegram and try to limit what I can.
Telegram is gone.
Yeah, there's a lot of people just on there for convenience. We're moving more to Signal.
We have Windows.
I know, because I'm just not sophisticated enough to set up a Ubuntu controller.
I mean, the only difference is that you also need a set of Windows because
I'm about to get a new computer and I'm going to do it.
There are computers already set up with Windows.
Yeah, okay. I just need that because I can figure it out once I'm on there, but I just ran into some trouble.
These days it's literally the same.
Okay.
Which is really weird.
I want to get like a gaming computer or something. I don't know.
Can,
What kind of computer do I get with the next? So they. I thought
there's just less of them, but most of the brands.
But I should find one in Singapore.
Yeah. I can remember checking Lenovo, that's what I'm getting recently. They have it's just like they have one Linux and then they have 50 Windows.
So it's like mucking around trying to use my hard drive.
Yeah, if you have to install yourself, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But installing Windows is also very
There's a really nice red wine smell in this room.
There's a good. It's like look at the walls and.
You can often walk into a room in NS and it's more like smells of not showering.
If it is too much for you, there's a shower in there.
Oh, yeah, that's
I don't
because
know
these
why
rooms,
there's a shower
exactly,
in
exactly.
there. We don't want
These
to talk about
private booths that we're here. Someone's going to work out how you connect these to the laptops so that we can.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
I mean, that would be like next level, right?
If there's no USB dongle, fuck it.
What's funny as well is that people been doing karaoke, right, in the one room on like the whole floor that's not actually set up for karaoke.
They've been making it work.
Yeah.
I the only time I've done karaoke in here is Chinese karaoke because it was all Chinese when we first came here in B1.
Do you speak Chinese?
No. No, the Chinese girls had a great time. We just kicked back and watched them. Enjoyed their passion.
Yeah.
At the karaoke in Japan, the only song that wasn't in Japanese was I'm a Bad Girl. That's a good song.
How many times did you perform?
Just once, that was enough.
So did you say you're here for 1
I
day?
was it was like an Lucas room for just the 4th of July.
Yes.
Hang out with
Just for
Did he
just
sing
like a
there
beer
on his
thing.
balcony today or
Yeah.
not?
On the balcony. Yeah,
Did he sing? What do you think?
yeah. No, we were not singing, but we were there like drinking a beer. Me, Sam, Lucas, just like chilling.
3 days last month.
I didn't think about it.
I came for the first opening.
No, nothing to think about. And yeah, just
okay,
like
So the island.
chatting a bit. And
Then
then I didn't find the room immediately, so I went to the bachata, and a friend of mine from Milan called me. So I spent like 20 minutes staying with him, like told him, and eventually came.
I like being a tourist.
No, he literally like encouraged me. I mean, Balajis invested in his company already, knows him really well. And
they allow
he's a crypto guy, but he loves to live in Milan. It's literally, he's from San Francisco, so it's like he's like one of the first that left San Francisco to Europe. That everyone there was like saying to him, "What are you fucking doing? You know, what are you doing?"
Oh wow, really?
But I don't think he will fit here. So I think I'm trying to invite him here for a month. Because I think like for 1 month he will definitely hang out here, but I really know that he will not like be
At first it was a
long
joke here, now it's a joke.
because he really wants to live in Europe.
I've been thinking about that.
That'd be amazing.
People who will only
It'd be so cool to work with him.
of my.
I mean, I think at the end of the story, I mean, I really have like today, you know.
Because I'm getting exhausted and distracted.
I'm sure, like,
Gotta write a book
well,
and
yeah,
shit.
someone commented
No.
in our previous
Someone's coming in.
event about like his 4 a.m. session.
Like, hey, I thought she was going to say, well, I think she might be changing mind.
Care about your health.
You try to work it out.
Friday
You know, and that's just so health oriented. You have to
Yeah, no, you will be.
be like, hey, you can't preach
It's like, it's cool.
being healthy, and then
I don't know, one of those one crack my jokes all the time.
yeah, and then
Like I literally postponed my
Yeah.
postponed my trip back, even though I'm flying tomorrow. So like I have
Get on here.
So
Yeah,
why,
I have
why,
12 hours before I'm back to
you just
Australia.
don't want to do 12 months.
And I had to postpone
No,
because
not
he
all. Like, I
went to bed at
think
5
it's like,
a.m.
I think
because
I'm,
of COVID in the US.
I think I'm
Because like we were supposed to
just
meet
need
in
to,
the morning, and then
or kind of like
someone
I'm
said
like
I
have a,
would be
you
like,
know, have a bigger commitment on getting like
like obviously
Yeah.
he's
an
not.
entire, you know,
Have you watched the
you know, we're getting this space,
Yeah, I watched it.
etc.
just some portion
Have you
of it.
found location?
Seen the
It's in the
car with
hotel,
the brand
downstairs.
You actually going to do
No.
it here?
Yeah, it's happening on the,
So
in the
right,
third
it's
floor.
not like,
panels out.
that's why Donovan said.
Yeah, I watched some other
He said to me,
speaker
"You're
talks,
living
but
in LA."
Ryan Johnson.
Yeah. So we were just
Ah.
talking about partnership, it's just like.
Yeah?
to,
Are you a big fan of
it's
this?
just like,
No.
be like,
No, I don't care about the lyrics or the micro.
Also
But
said it
the
one
panel with
long time.
Balajis was
Okay.
So the bootstrapping sounds.
I'll check it out.
like Brian is really
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Springboard.
yeah, it shows.
Yeah, exactly.
I respect him because he's doing an experiment on behalf of all
Playing
of
around
us,
with what
but
it's look like exactly. And
I'll wait for the results.
yeah,
and
then learn and
adopt what.
sort of
I don't even know if we need to
integrate
write
my
funny
thoughts
things like he's done
deeply every single week.
He's
But
shown you.
yeah, we're gonna have a
good
space
at
that
things.
fits 60, 70 people, I guess. Like, you know,
But you know,
like
Well,
by
if you have to do his whole
August, let's
protocol,
see.
exactly what he does,
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
feasible.
Well, it's good for me to kind of follow
That's
how
what
to
I
do
said.
it, because I'm trying to
Oh,
do
apologies.
that
Yeah.
community here, but
But he's done it.
one that
He's
will
proven
end up
it.
in spin out.
Yeah.
To spend 12 months.
But
Yeah,
it's not
no,
the
exactly.
clock,
I think
It's
we're-
something real.
and that's
Yeah,
obvious,
I think I'm
because it's not the one.
you know, I'm sort of effectively, yeah, we'll see what it is.
Can I
Like, I'm
take
sort
care
of
of my health?
effectively getting.
Yeah, why isn't it important?
From them per se. But I think like what we might build out is a better way
I
where
think it's just
it's easier
obsessed by.
to do. It's not like an API approach.
It's one of those
like
like
what and a struggle
focused on the
to
mission.
do
That's it.
anything which is
Yeah.
unique.
It's I've only been here
process
a
and
few days,
whether
but
it's like
this place is very
before
helpful.
it happens, right? Or like,
It's
so like,
place, because like
yeah, we'll
it's
see
good
what
to have it.
something. But yeah, no, I need to.
It's a manifestation of his vision.
Not being able to come to the long-term lunches.
No, it's
just because
manifestation
you're in
of
Singapore or
getting feedback from
like,
the
yeah, next week, yeah, I'm in Singapore.
The customers are
So
people who come here, who come here because Brian Johnson was mentioned. He's part of the movement.
Yeah,
You know,
you just get
It's sort of like
to
very
all the
related
rest of it, you know,
to
for
other
being here.
movements.
So,
And you know, there's
Yeah,
a lot of
I'm not paying
vegetarians and there's also a lot of
that's-
meat. So
everything ends up
doesn't mean much. Among the feedback is like eat healthy food, allow people to have exercise,
like reading your tweet response.
this sort of stuff. I mean, when you listen to Balaji at the conference a year ago, the part of the longevity relax, at least the way he said it was like, we're gonna get stuck. And that's it. Like he has the focus on becoming muscular and like physically better.
Interesting.
He never said anything about being healthy or being longer. Which is kind of fun, right? I get it, but everyone's got a different focus.
So you meet with him tomorrow, or?
No, I met him today.
Oh, okay.
I'm probably gonna look up at 6 or 7.
Yeah. Right.
So,
imagine,
do you
because
think
like,
you'll work?
I can't believe I'm like I live in a carry-on bag.
I'm
So
gonna
check
do
the suitcase,
some
and now like
small
look around
things
bring my
and maybe
like, what is this stuff that I've got?
I was raised by backpackers.
Do you have time for that?
Nomads in the 80s, right?
Oh,
No,
okay.
They were like,
and it was the Bible.
So yeah, that's kind of why refusing the job a month ago. But
yeah, kind of. No, on a shoestring, Asian on a shoestring.
Asia on a Oh, okay.
How have you been spending your time?
Oh, that was a real thing. Like, I remember being on
traveling
the
for a
beaches
year,
of
just
Costa Really crying with all the
Wow.
Germans and
So
John
I was on my time. I read about it.
You know, my sister was born
Was
in
John Lennon
Phuket
German?
Hospital
And visit
in
some.
1981.
Nice, that's very cool.
Yeah,
I went to school in Europe, and only one.
That's my own passion, I guess.
So, I mean, because I wanted to
But,
go
yeah. I think in some
That's what
instances I know
it
more
is.
than Balaji.
Like, yeah, no, give me school.
Some
Yeah.
area space. Because he doesn't have time to explore what's happening. There's so many projects that come out, so, oh, that's amazing, and 2 months later everyone gives up. And everyone knows. Like, there's so many. Basically, the reason I'm here is because I made the list that's on the dashboard.
Wow, I see you showed that off yesterday.
I gotta get rid of all
So
this
the
stuff.
dashboard is like the stuff I've been.
Why are young people
researching.
stressing over?
And now I'm telling him like, it's obsolete. It's obsolete. You gotta do something because some of the names are like, you don't want that.
I do it.
It's kind of weird.
Literally for so
Oh
long.
yeah.
Like,
I checked out the one that they
actually
mentioned
lead
before.
project. I wanted to get in a car and just
Like
like
search
search
it.
Traditional build.
carry on. Nothing else.
It's
It's like so.
Like let me show you.
I still have a lot of
Can
clothes and shoes.
you show me the book?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know if you would put it into a safe place.
Do you wanna?
So I don't know. Was that attached to it originally, or was that?
Yeah, that's
okay.
okay. A short thing. I wrote this book in very few.
What was that?
You wrote this?
The Welcome
Yeah,
Home.
it's made a thing
Oh,
about.
yeah, no, you're, oh, yes. Home.
This one's very new.
Strange concept of home, but it's not
Prosperous
necessarily people, it's a
Oh, what's the
system
Toji Island?
where you,
Yeah.
like, well, it can move.
It's just an interesting. Like, do you feel here is home?
Yeah, I actually said that to Donovan yesterday, joking around the dinner. He said,
so it's
he just
really
said,
intentional.
oh, like, you've been here a while. I went, yeah, it's my home. I'm really
They're really
housebound. I
serious.
actually cleaned my kitchen for the
They
newbies.
have
I'm
another.
The makerspace. This is kind of one thing I'm disappointed about.
That's
Yeah,
what I would do
here
with my
is
house.
also just like a workshop.
But there's nothing here.
Yeah, okay, but they're thinking about it. It's not gonna be the same. Here it's like a hammer and nails and you know, like a
You boss the cleaners around to make.
here there's gonna be more like.
You go.
That's good. The ones up here, I think, the worst in the
Yeah.
whole building.
Guys,
On the top here, the cleanest
Jim,
there.
There.
Marcus,
Yeah, honestly they are. 'Cause they work up in the first floor in the mornings, and they're better at taking photos of the cleaning they haven't done than doing the cleaning.
I've noticed that they take photos. So I think you should just start posting them around.
Yeah, but like I've never done
Like
much
spend time
hardware,
complaining
but
about
if there was like a makerspace and spend like
immediately
beginner stuff.
ejected.
Because they give me sort of slightly like.
It really depends when you meet. Like I've used makerspaces a lot, and depending on how what kind of makerspace you want to make, it is.
Yeah, but like they could give
But you know, when in V1,
courses.
the hotel people were really, when we left, they were kind of almost crying, saying, we've
I think everything I learned
been here,
at school
you're so nice to us.
Guys, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we've got you. Hi.
Hello, hello. Hey, Marcus. Hey, Jim. John, David. What's up, guys?
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead with the Agora. Okay, so open discussion. Let me go ahead and just share my screen. Okay. Are there any particular topics or subjects that you guys would like to, talk about based on the text? We could go ahead and choose which one we want, basically. It's or multiple.
I would say topic 2, when economic contributors want political control. I mean, if I was just going to get that going, I would say that I think as a small state we don't really have much choice. If you're starting a tiny little state with 0 population, it's very difficult to believe that you would successfully attract wealthy individuals if they didn't get political control. I mean, it's hard to imagine that a wealthy individual would just. I suppose you might get some donations, but it'd be difficult to imagine that. Like, I mean, if you have a big state, then there's like network effects and people are just kind of just stuck there. But if you have a small state and you have to bring people in and they have to make an active decision to come in, it's difficult to believe that people with capital would want to put huge amounts of capital into the project unless they got some degree of political influence from it.
Does there have to be a connection? I mean, could someone be completely insensitive to it? Like if they actually donated without, like, is that even possible in a?
It's possible. It is possible. I mean, if you think about how much money is donated to charities versus how much money is invested into stocks, there's a lot less money sloshing around for charities, but there's some money. So yeah, they might just donate. That would be a possibility.
May I say something on this topic? Hi guys, nice to meet you, Leo here. I think like an important thing to consider is like an audit of which period of history in which we are, and like understanding like the global historical present moment, and also understanding history. And I think like this movement of decentralization is not something new in the history. It's kind of like I call it a sort of like Balajis talk about history is running in reverse. So it's like explaining there's a lot of things they are like running in reverse. Like he's always saying a country that has like a terrible 20th century will have like a great 21st century, and example like that. But I also do believe there is another interesting concept that's called recursion. So basically, the history got rebooted, like history repeats itself, but with a new element. So we have really to understand which is the moment of history that in the past already happened and is in analogy similar to this moment. And based on that, it's not only about theoretically deciding which is like the best political, let's say, structure for a network state, but which is the most feasible based on what the history already teaches us. For example, when the fall down of the Roman Empire happened, like the Roman Empire was divided into two big things. So it was like the Roman Empire of the West and the Roman Empire of the East. So it's like Byzantium was like Istanbul, where the city that today is Istanbul. And that side remained solid, while the West, Rome, was falling down to the pressure of immigration, the pressure of bureaucracy. A lot of things that are similar to what Balajis says regarding like the empire of this time, the United States. And in that context, there is the immersion of like what in Europe is like this fragmentation of potential proto-network states. Like a good religious example of a network state is definitely the Catholic Church. But if we take talking about a political network state, there is like the Sea Republic. Like my city of origin is Venice, and Venice was like not fitting any description of startup, of Aristotle politic, because it was not like a pure plutocracy, was not a pure democracy, was literally an oligarchy that was a republic. And of course, was working because, as you said, John, people with money, they want power. And it's utopistic thinking that we can fund the entire movement without money. So the cold start of a startup society is like we have to drop in money, and money will be funds, VCs, high net worth individuals. And of course, it's utopistic to me thinking like a pure DAO type of structure for a network state, which doesn't consider these elements that people they want to make money and take profit, and you have to reward them with a sort of political recognition. So I do think like the recursion that is happening in history right now is close to this potential, oligarchy. So like rich people, they're like with there could be debatable a charismatic leader of a startup society, or a more democratized, let's say, startup society like a DAO system. But the other story, like there are already examples in the past where, for example, in Venice there was no king. There was the first republic in the world, and the fork of Venice was like, which is like the Republic of Ragusa. Italy was the first republic that abolished slavery in the history in 15th century, in fucking 15th century.
Wow.
So, and was a fork of Venice in Croatia. It's Dubrovnik, the Republic of Ragusa. And there are some reference that I see in Startup Society regarding Hanseatic League. But also Hanseatic League is quite interesting because Hanseatic League is literally a trade deal, where you are like the analogy is literally you are proto founders, like proto merchant, that like in this case would be startup founders, builders, people baked by money of VCs. They start up a society and they put together like some deals, like an archipelago, and literally the Hanseatic League was an archipelago of trade republics. So I think there are some elements. The important thing is not just, to my understanding, to my point of view, just discussing theoretically which is the best political system, but like kind of understanding the history and which element is making feasible the movement to succeed. Then, of course, I really hope that there is a variety, like Balajis always says, of different startup societies with different ideologies in terms of one is more founder driven, other one is more pure democracy, like Rousseau, Switzerland, or whatever. So I hope that the movement will have like a variety of political system. But I think without understanding which is the moment of history that is rebooted, is a recursion from something in the past, we will miss a point. Because as you said, Aristotle was much smarter, was literally cataloging everything, but he had like some elements that they are stuck in the past. They're not. They get rebooted already thanks to the Roman Empire taking Greek philosophy and adapting it into a franchise, which is literally the business model of Rome was like I build a water system, I build streets, I give you like this package of amazing thing that they call law. You take your amazing gods or whatever, and that's my franchise. You pay taxes to me, and that's the business model of the Roman Empire. I control the army, so I put you some legionnaires. Like that was the franchise, and then they fall down like United States. That they were United States is like Roman Empire. They want to export democracy. It's like you export the franchise till you get stuck in bureaucracy or inflation or the pressure of immigration. If you go right now in California, it's like LA is half Korean. Chinese, a lot of Chinese people in San Francisco. So the pressure of immigration in the US is big, and that will be one of the reasons why we'll evolve into potential network state. I strongly agree with Balajis in that point. So I think I don't know, like TLDR. My point is understanding which is the moment of history that is kind of rebooting now, and starting from that point, not as a theoretical debate, but as a practical standpoint. So we don't have alternative. We have to understand which is the start point, what is making feasible us to succeed, because we don't want the alternative. We don't want the nation state, and starting from there, and kind of understanding in that framework that what could be, the possible angles.
That's a good.
I've actually.
That's a good point. Leo, good to hear you speak, Leo. How's it going?
Hi, good to see you.
Oh, good to see you, buddy. Good friend. Can I just build on that because we had a lot of discussions around the United States having being a parallel to Rome. And I think we actually had a lot of some of that discussion in network school threads, and comparing just to build on really good points that Leo made. You got the U.S. and Rome, right, started as a republic. Then you got the Rome, you had Pax Romana. For America, you had Pax Americana. And then what Leo said, can I just build on this excellent point, where the transition from Pax Romana, right, through the crisis of the second century, through the Constantine Restoration, all the way through the schism of the Eastern Roman Empire, the Western Empire, and then you had the Byzantine era. You can argue that from Heracles in the seventh century, that was when after Justinian, right? That's when the Roman Empire really became the Byzantine Empire in a sense. You had this very long stretch of the Byzantine era that was arguably characterized by a lot more decentralization, right? Decentralization compared to the peak Roman times. And then in fact, fast forward to America, Leo mentioned immigration, there's inflation. A couple of days ago in the main NS discussion thread, I think it was Daniel or someone posted about how America's boom America's debt, right? The big beautiful bill makes the debt even higher. The debt just keeps on increasing. Rome had that problem. The Roman Empire had that problem many millennia ago. So history does to a large extent rhyme. And are we seeing potentially for America the transition from the Pax Romana to the digital Byzantine era? A digital Byzantine era where on one hand, more states could be essentially doing their own thing. We see California, right, wanting to become independent. We see Texas and Florida kind of doing their own thing. It's kind of similar to the transition from the Roman times to the Byzantine era. You had more of provincial themes where you had more lords. Yes, you had Constantinople, the Emperor Constantinople down in the purple, but the true power arguably laid in the different lords in Asia Minor in the western regions of the Byzantine Empire, and so can the United States potentially become
Actually, let me add something because I think it's interesting parallel. So basically, just like coming back to my analogy with Venice. So Venice at the beginning was not a republic immediately. They started with a bunch of villages. I mean, it's literally forest cities. Like it's a fake city built on woods, and forest city is an artificial city built on, from fake sand. It's literally, the analogy is pretty solid. And the interesting thing is like they were like a bunch of villages. They start to get together, and they had an initial protection from the Byzantine Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So they were like a trading deal with them. So it's literally the same thing. So the network state, it could be network school as a node or whatever. Basically, they are all Balajis connection with Silicon Valley. Within your analogy, is literally the Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire that is separated from like the main Washington, which is Rome or whatever, and they make a deal with them. So they have like an economical dependency in a way, and they get their own potential independency over time. But at the beginning, they get protected politically by the Byzantine Empire, and that's quite interesting. because it's literally the way for a small, because it was like a small city, and they claim to be like the evolution of the Roman Empire. How a small city in the middle of nowhere was able to build their own independence, and then became like literally the Amazon of the past, because the business model of Venice was a marketplace, physical, like Amazon, controlling all the trades in the fucking world. All the trades.
It's kind of like Athens. And fun fact, Venice, the Venetians did sack Constantinople in 1204 during the Fourth Crusade. So the yes, it started with the Byzantine, but they became arguably the bigger one. The Venice became bigger than the Byzantine Empire, and actually arguably replaced.
Venice at its peak was controlling Istanbul. So literally Venice gets like in the Isaac Asimov foundation, it became the empire. Because when you control like the capital of the former empire, you became the empire, right? So they became the empire. And the funny fact, you know what it is? Then when the Turkish people they kick off, Venice from Istanbul, Venice was able to make a deal to control the trades, and losing the political control of Istanbul, they made much more money with this deal. So literally, they lose the control of the capital of the former Roman Empire of the East, but they became even richer because of this deal. That's super
Because
funny.
they realized that Rome no longer existed at the time. It was the fall of Constantinople in 1453 that ushered in the Italian Renaissance in a way.
Yeah, I think
Rome
the
no longer
problem
existed.
with the narrative of the Roman Empire, the historian, they give like this idea of the Roman Empire fall down for barbarians. That's actually not true. So it's like we have like this philosophy of history idea of Gibbon, which is like the main reference for the fall down of the Roman Empire, which is a very interesting philosophical thesis, which influenced a lot of philosophers in the classical German philosophy. For example, Hegel, read Gibbon, that is like this historian talking about the fall down of the Roman Empire. But the phenomenon is much more complex. And if you want to read something interesting, there's like this guy called Rodney Stark, which is an American sociologist, and he's talking about like the real fall down of the Roman Empire based on also the taking over of Christianity, because that was another crucial element of disgregation, because the religion was much more powerful than the former franchise. That's TLDR was that.
I hope you come to a lecturer's talk tomorrow.
What?
A lecturer's giving a talk on Bitcoin tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And accounting, and one of the things that
I think I'll be getting you to do half the talking.
no, not half. But the importance of Venice is something that I've studied. The startup society and the influence and impact on dissemination of information, increase in education, mass adoption, that came out of the publishing houses in Venice around the Renaissance.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the interesting is understanding the framework, but like not following like a blueprint. Because also, I mean, I come from Venice, is literally created like the worst close aristocracy in the world. Because I mean, at the end of the story was like a very conservative model, because they made like a business model that was working. They had a very complex, system to control power, like very complex and very innovative. But at the end of the story, to preserve power over time, like the aristocracy became like super close. With there is like this important historical moment in Venice called Serrata del Maggior Consiglio, which like literally is like the close down of the major council, which is the parliament, and there is no possibility to get in the parliament anymore. And if you are one of these rich family, good. If you are out. That's it. They were conserving the power as much as they can, and in order to keep like this business model working. So I think like over time, I mean that's also was a problem for Venice. That's why Venice failed, because when like a small just city based on trades, when like the Portuguese and Spanish and the England Empire started to find new routes for commerce, Venice died. Literally Venice died, because literally you have like a new pressure for going in different routes and having more competition. And Venice cannot handle this competition also because of this political structure that was like literally super close, was not able to innovate, and the entire geography of Venice and the entire power of Venice was based on the Silk Road. Whenever you discover that the earth is round and you can turn around, Marco Polo would buy, you know what I mean? So
sorry, I also think that what happened in Venice with the equality of the Parliament
yeah,
is very similar to what happened in England with the House of Lords.
yeah,
It's the aristocratic influence of controlling families over Parliament, and I think it's a really, because we see that history repeat itself.
yeah, definitely. And I think there are several examples that we can bring over because also, so Sea Republic, like Hanseatic League, Genoa, Venice, there is an example, but also like the modern age, with Portugal, Spain financing this new discovery is literally another analogy because you have like in that age another decentralization elements that was like pirates republics.
Yeah.
So literally people they say, oh fuck, that's Libertalia, and we're in fucking Africa, we are pirates. We make a simple rule, we split the profit, and that's our rule. Whenever you kill each other, it's okay, but we split the revenue. So that was literally Libertalia. And then there was like this interesting business model where pirates, frontiersmen, and they're organizing each other. They were literally working for the king for doing the dirty job, Corsair, England was like, oh yeah, I have to kick the ass of the Spanish people, but I really I can't because there is this treaties. But maybe you can, and I can pay you, and yeah, that was another interesting decentralization moment. The Dutch, yeah.
By the way, I'd like to add something. I've recently had an idea of how to fund. I forgot to mention. I've been thinking quite a bit a few days ago about how to fund nations without resulting in it being a plutocracy. And one idea I had is that, like, say some rich guy, buys some very cheap land in the boonies of some. It might be a poor country. It might actually even be a wealthy country because quite often land is like really cheap in somewhere like Canada, for example. But anyway, the rich guy buys property in the boonies of like the middle of nowhere, right? And then he pays an organization to negotiate the acquisition of territory of that the acquisition of territory through an international agreement for a lump sum. So he would like pay money to another organization to negotiate that his property becoming a new country, and then he'd pay that organization money, and the organization would pay the government, and then the government would sell the territory. So the government sells the territory as well as the property, and now you have a new now you have a new territory. And now, if the legal system of that territory is more I don't know, friendly to capital, or just has better rules, more desirable for some reason than the previous territory, you would expect the property to appreciate. So the thing is, the rich guy who's bought the property might actually be willing to give money to turn that into a new country and even invest in that new country, even if he doesn't actually have a stake in the governance of the country. So he just by owning property in the country, he has a stake in the economic valuation of the country, but he might not actually have a stake in the governance. He might pay the money to establish the governance, even if he doesn't have a stake in it, because his economic stake of the land that he owns goes up in value. So that would be another way to fund the formation of new countries without having to actually basically make it an oligarchy where the guys who actually fund the acquisition of the territory actually literally get to like make all the rules.
I want to bring up like a modern example of maybe like a Venice or a Holland, like a trade center. I'd read about the Dubai International Financial Center, which exists as a place where like international corporations can like sign contracts and mediate disputes between themselves, and they pay like a membership fee. So it sort of exists as like a state as a service, right? So it like mediates between these groups. Um, but they provide the service like between these very wealthy corporations. Um, but it's in everyone's interest that it remains impartial and that there is no corruption, right? And it's possible there that because everyone is sort of on the same playing field, right, there's not as much of a power dynamic that could lead to like corruption. Um, but it's interesting to think like where the mediation happens if like if a certain practice within that company like leads to the death of an employee, like where does that get mediated? Are there like the different issues are like can they be mediated through different state structures? And in order to like have a cohesive network state system, like every person or at least every corporation would have to be members of like multiple different states um that deal with different that all deal with different issues of how they're regulated.
Yeah, DIFC is interesting because it's based on common law. So when you're on
Yeah.
that side of the street, inside DIFC, it's common law. You walk across the street and it's Sharia law, and so it's I've been into the like the mediation area, like where they teach law and all of this sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. So as an international organization, you go there. That's where you set up a company, and then you catch the train, 10 stops down, and you go to another special economic zone, which is also based on a form of common law and different transaction law. But if something happens in the middle, yeah, what happens to you? Like, what law are you under? Like, someone steals your handbag, but that doesn't happen in Dubai for good reason. But if an employee is killed for some reason, where does that? Yeah, so if you apply that to the network state, and you have all of these different laws, but you are a member of the network state, and you're visiting somebody else, like what?
Yeah.
And you do wrong in that state versus the state that you're a member of. Like, there's got to be some form of alliance between constitutions or some recognition of other constitutions in the constitution of a network state. That's my view.
Yeah, and some form of enforcement at some point, right? If you can't come to a amicable agreement, something has to be enforced somehow. Um, but like a trade union could be an organization, a quasi-state of, the workers of these separate entities who are filed under separate, um, jurisdictions that could exist sort of spread between them.
Yeah, the other aspect of all of those different rules and what you lobby for is there is this thing called international law, and international law tends to lead the update. Like, there'll be a rule change on international law. So if you're operating internationally in certain circumstances, what then happens is the sovereign nations have to update their own rules to match international law. So if you commit the crime inside the sovereign state, even though it would be against international law, if the law of the state isn't updated at the same time, then it's not illegal. So this is, I think there has to be some consideration around alliances between states and common behaviour, and or at least some kind of, we're talking about exiling people based on citizenship tests. Well, if you go and visit another network state and someone behaves nefariously, can that network state exile them back to the network state they came from, or are they allowed back? Like, it's
something that's actually interesting from that point, especially in regards to international law. Can you guys hear me, by the way, properly? Because I took off the mic. Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. So here, I actually had it was an interesting it was an interesting scenario that that Aristotle brought about that I thought was like so relevant, because he's like, similarly, even if certain people lived in separate places yet not so far apart, and then goes on to say, what then exactly is the reason for this? For clearly it is not because their intercourse is from a distance, since even if they come together for intercourse of this sort, uh, and he talks about like all these different things about like, you could go ahead and have like a defensive alliance and all these things, but in terms, I actually wanted to show you guys this. I had a conversation with Claude. Where is it? Not this one. No. Where'd it go? Trying to find it. Basically, like everything with the internet is able to go ahead and mix together, right? And so maybe there's like a fear of having like a one world government, right? Because of that, right? So like you don't have any more, you don't have different jurisdictions, you don't have like a, like a exiled city where you could protect yourself, or maybe a city of refuge. Like if we're able to have like this society where everything is just like one international law, then maybe it could go to the negative side, right? I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
Just a quick segue. A beer just logged in. Hey, a beer.
Hey,
Yeah, I
Beer.
think
Also from the network
Hey
school.
guys, how's it going? Actually, I've been here since around 10:30.
Oh,
I've
yeah, we
caught
meet you. We meet you.
up here. Hi.
I've caught some of the stuff that Leo was talking about. Hey everyone, how's it going?
Yeah, just on your point about the, we do need to, I guess, reach consensus on laws internationally. We try to do that in tax law, which is my field, with BEPS and other initiatives, cooperation. But really, there does need to be, I believe it can only be achieved through a network state model, that we can have one system. Do we have a bunch of decision makers sitting around a round table, or is it something that is more participatory? I don't know. That's a big conversation, maybe for another
Yeah, I'm trying to work out. I'm not sure I believe in international law. I feel it's almost like antithetical to what we're doing. And the point is, we're trying to create different options, which are not all one and the same. And I guess like the benefits of international law would be, again, ease of doing business across these different states, right? Standardization of all the rest of it. But I guess the question, does that require any actual rules or laws? I mean, like, do you deduce it down, or whatever you call it, reduce it down to an API or a protocol that would still effectively be a law of some description? I don't know.
Or a treaty system.
I mean, like, decentralization in its essence, right, is an act of inefficiency, because of there are benefits that you gain potentially by doing that, right? And so, I don't know. That's I wonder if I'm anti-international law.
I think international law. I think one thing about international law in the UN is I think that the number of countries has actually increased since the founding of the UN, and that's because prior, if you imagine what the world was like before the UN, it was basically the British Empire, the French colonies, that there was all these European powers that just colonized everywhere, and there were very few countries. In fact, there were just a handful of empires, and actually the United Nations, like the kind of the United Nations as a global institution, like a big part of the United Nations actually was to facilitate the formation of new countries. Like Balajis has actually given these presentations where he shows the number of countries in the 1950s or 1940s was about 50, and now it's 192. So there's actually been a huge proliferation of new countries, and I think broadly speaking, one reason for that is the UN, because it basically created these international law norms, and systems of trade sanctions to enforce those international norms. Maybe not as efficiently as an army, but at least to very much discourage countries from violating each other's borders, and that those kind of international norms and sanctions and that kind of stuff really is what stopped many small countries from getting gobbled up into larger empires. So I actually think international norms are very important for small countries. And that actually I'm not even sure small countries are viable in the absence of international norms, whether they just get gobbled up by more militaristic neighbors.
Yeah, I think you have a point, because I do agree that it's important for small country, while it's completely irrelevant for geopolitical forces, because no one is taking care of a UN when they have to decide geopolitical things. But still, for a small country, yes, because they get like a platform for recognition, and as you know, I mean, startup societies and network states that would be mostly in the small country side. I think you know, having a platform for a sort of laws for the archipelago kind of would be, yeah, something interesting.
So you see money as a cooperation technology,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you had all of these countries that all had fiat, and then we maybe had Bitcoin as this sort of like impartial. I'm not sure we go that far, but like, you know, sort of independent, decentralized, not controlled by any single sort of like sovereign state, which then allows small or large nations to be able to effectively to cooperate based on the rules of Bitcoin. I wonder if there are sort of like other, you know, other protocols that can be created that are sort of because the UN is I mean, I'm very anti-UN, let's put it that way, even if I'm not anti-international law. But I guess like you say, actually international law is just actually just like it's currently like an inefficient or maybe a not as.
But you know, I think
we've got to reinvent regulation.
Yeah. But I think we don't have to be naive, considering that Bitcoin is definitely a thing that is not controlled by anyone. But at the end of the story, if Bitcoin will grow, and right now is you know, there is if you take like this website bitcointreasury.org or .net, I don't remember. So you see all the companies that are like creating a treasury on Bitcoin. And there are funds that are creating specific strategies on like holding Bitcoin and acquiring a company using Bitcoin. So eventually, when you will have, the participation of companies they own Bitcoins in the network state movement. So you will have like, you know, a lot of
they don't control the network, Leo.
Yeah, so it's like you have to create mechanism to avoid plutocracy.
They just
because at the end of the story, when you have like company with a lot of money entering there, so it's became like a sort of plutocracy. How much money, how much Bitcoin you hold, and you have a war.
This is the great thing about the Bitcoin model for government, is that it doesn't matter how much you own, you don't get to change the rules, and everyone can still access it.
Yeah, but like, you know, so if Bitcoin will worth a lot of money, is like, you know, it's like the power of money as a hard power, you know, in a way. So I think I'm fine with oligarchy rather than just plutocracy is like a degeneration of it. So you have to create mechanism to prevent it.
But you can have layer 2s on Bitcoin, which are their own economies, but they're all just settling to agree on the value of Bitcoin. So, you know, we can look at DAOs, we can look at nations, we can model them on Bitcoin sort of principles and structure. Doesn't mean we have to recreate Bitcoin, but we can have, you know, it's kind of esoteric to expand the principles of Bitcoin.
But I mean,
social structures.
Recreating Bitcoin are already like the thousands of blockchain already existing out there, because you have
and they can all be accountable to Bitcoin in the value where we're talking about money. But I won't get off track. But yeah, I don't think we need to conflate ownership with control.
But well, the thing about Bitcoin is there's not much rules in Bitcoin. Like the only rule in Bitcoin is he who has the most Bitcoin um, he who has the most Bitcoin has the most purchasing power, and you can't steal someone else's Bitcoin except through a wrench attack. You can have a wrench attack where you like run up to someone with a lot of Bitcoin with a monkey wrench and say, "Give me your private keys or I'll kill you" or something like that. And that is something that Bitcoin won't protect people from. So there's going to be quite. I mean, I think there's going to be quite a lot of politics. When when a large number of people really start to take Bitcoin seriously, it's actually going to be somewhat dystopian. That people are going to have like have to take serious measures to. People with a lot of Bitcoin have to take serious measures to stop themselves getting kidnapped and things like that. It's not necessarily going to be completely sort of happy clappy, you know.
There was a case.
So you better not buy any.
There was a case in Melbourne where they tried to kidnap a gentleman who had some Bitcoin stocks. I do, just on the interaction between network states, I do have a precedent. I worked on something called the FIX protocol. FIX stands for Financial Information Exchange, and it's an open source protocol. So most people will have heard of SWIFT. FIX is SWIFT, but in the front office. So in global markets, every time you say a buy or a sell of a share on a stock exchange, it gets translated into the FIX protocol, the message gets sent and hits the exchange. Stock exchanges used to have a flaw with people yelling and screaming and buying and selling and all of that sort of thing. The FIX protocol is what automated that transition, and what happened was it increased capital flow between countries and it opened up other markets. So if we think about markets like Taiwan and Korea, as a foreign investor, I could only buy X amount of a particular stock because that was the rules of the exchange of the country. They didn't want foreign ownership of domestic companies. So if you were running an Asian fund and you were Franklin Templeton or a Fidelity, you had caps and limits. Now, the FIX protocol developed all of these different message systems to facilitate whatever the rules were that existed on the stock exchange within the country at that particular point in time. So when I think about what could happen between different network states, whether it's a international law from the point of view of a common language or an open source code or an open source set of rules, or whether it's a way of respecting the rules within the constitution of each network state, I think that we've got different models and different precedents. And certainly with Bitcoin, I think that it's possible, but I do think we need to consider what that looks like in terms of the constitution and the exercise that we're supposed to be doing. I'm not quite sure.
Bitcoin is just literally a protocol for sending data back and forth. It's just that we've chosen for that data to represent sort of like value. And I just wonder if there's something which doesn't actually involve any rule. It's almost like rules underneath rules. The protocol of rules underneath rules, as opposed to setting a set of arbitrary laws and enforcing that on a nation. It's actually just a protocol for the interaction of all the different sets of laws, which would be beautiful if we can get there, right? I'm getting bed.
I think it's bedtime.
Bedtime.
So we have 1 minute. Yeah, we have 1 minute left, and we have some people who told me that because it's late, we're not going to do the last part. We'll just schedule for another time. So, I mean, again, this was just the beginning. Here, this is the timer. This was just the first one. I hope you guys really liked it. I mean, I hope to come to the network school later in the year. Yeah, again, I've been part of the virtual lectures about 4 years ago, but I really want to check out what's going on over there. And what are you guys staying there for a bit, or like what is your situation right now? You are, Electra?
I'm here. I've signed up to the 12 months. I'm moving into an apartment this week, and I could be here for years.
Nice.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Well, we should definitely be in touch. Jim and I will go ahead and have like a nice summary email, just and also on Discord. And yeah. It was a pleasure to meet you all.
Really,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. We've really been so happy that you organised this.
If you guys have any feedback on this as well, I mean, it would be great also
Yeah.
to listen to some feedback on this.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. Yeah. And yeah, thanks for taking.
You could write anything, or maybe send us an email or Discord. That would be very helpful.
Tell me about the email. Will I know what your email is?
I think it's on the invite. The Luma. Did you see the Luma invite? Yeah.
I've got emails from Il Prinquets, I think.
Yes, yes, that's mine. That's mine. That's correct.
Okay, great. I'll send you an email. Yeah.
What's the Discord that?
Oh, it's the network school Discord. There's like a bunch of channels in the network school. And then there's
I
like
might be in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm a member of that Discord. If I get an invite link, I'll join. Could you, Il Prinquets, or you? Could you send a link to an invite to the network school Discord to the Luma, to the people who've been given their email addresses to this Luma meeting? Or
yeah, Jim, I think we could invite, right?
no, the Luma is for the Luma. The network school, you have to apply through the network school. Once you're admitted, you pay the fees. Then I think that they add you to the Discord afterwards.
Okay, right. Okay.
So this was like a combination of various
startup societies, which is like what you're discussing. So that was shared in there tonight, and that's why we're here, because we get together and chat weekly.
That's fantastic. No, thank you for really for attending this, and we thought that
I'm so glad that we were able to do this like Zoom and a gathering, and it lasted 3 hours. Far out.
This is a first for in many ways. It's like a first time when we have like a very long session with NS folks and then folks outside of NX with in a very online fashion. And also we have a combination of folks from from various communities. It's like online, offline, and also a really interesting in-depth discussion around political philosophy, around some of the more intellectual side of network states. It's a first in many cases, kind of like a beta test for all of us to see if it does this work. Like really, we're trying to answer the question of, will this work? Can this work?
Yeah, well, we did it in a karaoke room.
Karaoke room as well, of all places.
Okay, thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank
you. Thanks. Bye.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th.
Yeah,
Independence Day.